I was riding my electric scooter through the imperial capital, my mind a complete mess. It was afternoon, and the sun was beating down on the intersection. That morning, my mother had called me in tears. My father had fallen while cutting wood on the mountain and was severely injured. He was stuck in the county hospital, and the surgery would cost 150,000 yuan. I was on my way to the bank to beg for a loan. The light turned green. I revved my scooter and took off, leading the pack across the street. Suddenly, a white Porsche Panamera swung into a right turn. It wasn't going fast, and the driver was a beautiful girl, but she clearly hadn't expected a scooter to come flying off the sidewalk. She screamed, gripped the steering wheel in a panic, and slammed her foot down. Instead of the brake, she hit the gas. The Porsche lunged forward like a predator. There was a sickening crunch as my scooter shattered into pieces. I was launched into the air like a projectile, hitting the pavement with a bone-shaking thud. I coughed up a thick mouthful of blood. Every organ in my body felt like it had been pulverized. I lay there on the asphalt, shivering, my bones feeling like a pile of broken sticks. More blood trickled from the corner of my mouth and dripped onto the bone jade pendant hanging around my neck. The jade instantly soaked up the blood, turning from white to a deep, pulsing red. Then, it vanished into thin air. A streak of red light shot straight into the space between my eyebrows. My vision blurred. Through the haze of pain, I saw a pair of incredibly long legs walk toward me. I looked up, and what I saw made my nose bleed instantly. The image was so intense that I blacked out on the spot. My last thought was, who is this? Why isn't she wearing any underwear? When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. I kept my eyes closed for a moment, trying to make sense of the dream I'd just had. In the dream, a powerful middle-aged man had appeared before me. He told me he was my ancestor, Lin Tian, and that I had inherited his supreme legacy. He warned me to cultivate well and not to disgrace his name. A warm current flowed through my veins, and I felt my shattered bones knitting back together. I opened my eyes, feeling completely fine. I knew for a fact my ribs had been snapped like dry twigs. How was this possible? I reached for my neck, but the jade pendant was gone. My father had given it to me as a family heirloom to keep me safe. It really was the ancestor. A nurse pushed the door open and walked in. I instinctively turned to look at her, and my nose nearly exploded again. In my eyes, she was completely naked. She had a tiny waist, rounded hips, and a stunning body. Her long, pale legs moved toward my bed. My face burned. Who are you? Why did you come in here without clothes? I blurted out. My brain was a total blank. Was this some kind of hospital roleplay? This was exactly the kind of scene I'd dreamed about 1,000 times. Maybe someone had discovered my talents and brought me here to film a movie. Comparing her to the actresses I'd seen, she was much better. Her assets were far more impressive. What are you talking about? Yang Shui, the nurse, glared at me. I'm here to change your bandages. Lie down. She pushed me back onto the bed. As she leaned over, her chest was less than 10 centimeters from my face. My body reacted instantly. I had to curl up and lie on my side to hide my embarrassment. Why are you acting so weird? Yang Shui teased, noticing my red face. Were you dreaming about a celebrity? She tapped my forehead with her finger. I realized then that something was wrong. This wasn't a movie set. It was a real hospital. That meant my eyes had gained X-ray vision. The door opened again, and another woman walked in. My nose started running again. This new woman had the face of an angel and the body of a demon. Her waist was so thin I could have wrapped my hands around it, and her legs were easily over a meter long. It was confirmed. I could see through everything. There was no way 2 women in a row had forgotten their clothes. Miss Jean, you're here, Yang Shui said with a smile. How is he? Jean Biao asked, looking at me with guilt in her eyes. It's strange, Yang Shui replied, looking at me like I was a freak. His broken bones seemed to have healed themselves. He's perfectly fine now. Jean Biao looked shocked. When I was brought in, the doctors said I had over a dozen broken ribs and needed immediate surgery. She walked closer to see for herself. With 2 naked, beautiful women standing right over me, I had to cover my nose and close my eyes. I was going to explode. Can you both please leave for a minute? I need to calm down, I managed to say. What? Are you shy? Yang Shui laughed. It wasn't about being shy. No man could stay calm in this situation. Why are you arching your back like that? Jean Biao asked. Is your back still hurt? Before I could stop her, she grabbed the edge of my blanket. No, don't, I yelled, gripping the covers, but she was too fast. She ripped the blanket away. She froze. You pervert. Her face turned bright red, and she spun around, covering her eyes. Yang Shui, being a nurse, had seen a lot, but even she blushed and spat a curse at me. Still, I noticed her eyes linger for a second. I could tell she wouldn't forget that sight anytime soon. When I finally left the hospital, I kept my head down. I didn't dare look at anyone. Seeing beautiful women was one thing, but seeing men was just disgusting. I accidentally caught a glimpse of a huge, muscular guy, nearly 2 meters tall, and realized that despite his size, he was carrying nothing more than a tiny earthworm. I quickly looked away, trying to focus on my own reflection. This new life was going to be complicated. It was a lot to take in. Honestly, I felt like a god. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, and even though I tried to keep my head down as I walked, I couldn't help but peek. Every time I saw a muscular guy, my male competitive instinct kicked in. I had to look. What I saw was a wake-up call. Most of these tough guys were carrying nothing but earthworms or toothpicks. It wasn't at all what I expected. I guess not everyone was as gifted as I was. I started feeling pretty arrogant. Out of every man I saw on the street, not a single one could compete with me. Then, I spotted a guy who was skin and bones. He looked like he'd blow away in a breeze, but when I looked, I felt a surge of annoyance. Why was this scrawny kid packing more heat than me? My competitive streak took over, and I started observing more people. I eventually came to a conclusion. The tough guys were earthworms, and the skinny guys were dragons. It was a strange reality. After scanning over 100 people, I realized I still belonged to the elite tier. My ego was officially through the roof. By the time I made it back to my rental, it was already dark. I'd been graduated for 5 years and had always lived with roommates. Real estate in the capital was insane. I lived near Panjiayuan, where even the cheap apartments cost tens of thousands per square meter. I'd never be able to afford a place of my own, so I rented. Even a full apartment cost 7 or 8,000 a month, so sharing was my only option. I lived in Ziwei Community, right next to the market, in Unit 502. I reached the door and realized I'd forgotten my keys. I knocked softly. Who is it? A pleasant female voice called out from inside. Little Lin, it's me, I replied. The door opened, and a beautiful woman in a white nightgown stepped out. This was Bai Xiaoling, my roommate. She was a grad student at the Media University and the campus belle. She stood 5'7" with a model's figure. She had just finished showering and was drying her hair. I didn't dare look at her directly. I kept my eyes averted, trying to squeeze past her into the hallway. What's wrong with your eyes? Why won't you look at me? Bai Xiaoling asked, sounding confused. My eyes aren't feeling well, I muttered. Just let me get inside first. No way. Look at me, she said, spreading her arms to block my path. She was insisting on eye contact. Well, I thought, don't blame me. You asked for this. I shifted my gaze and looked straight at her. My vision pierced right through the white fabric. I saw her slender frame, her porcelain skin, her delicate collarbones, and her flat stomach. The only flaw was that she seemed a bit undernourished. She was barely a handful. I instinctively shook my head. What's too small? Bai Xiaoling froze. Then she realized I was staring intensely at her chest. Her face turned bright red. You pervert, she snapped. She spun around and stomped away, her hips swaying as she disappeared into her room. She was gorgeous. Her smooth, white back was like a masterpiece from God. A total back view killer. Our apartment had 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Besides me, the other 2 roommates were women. Other than Bai Xiaoling, there was Yao Yao. She worked as a DJ at a bar, so she slept all day and worked all night. I went into my room and sat on the bed. My eyes drifted toward the wall. Yao Yao's room was right next to mine, while Bai Xiaoling was across the hall. As I stared at the wall, my vision cut right through the bricks. Yao Yao was sprawled out on her bed, fast asleep. She had a perfect, balanced figure, curvy in all the right places. It was the kind of body any man would lose his mind over. She was lying there in a starfish position, and my breath hitched. No man could resist that view. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form, I whispered to myself. Ba. I forced myself to look away and repeated the mantra 3 times. I needed the Buddha to forgive me. Having X-ray vision was great, but if the whole world stayed transparent forever, it was going to be a problem. I needed to control it. I wanted to see through things only when I chose to. I spent the next hour experimenting. I closed my eyes, opened them, and focused on the thought of turning it off. After about 100 tries, I felt a shift. I looked at the wall, and this time, all I saw was wallpaper. Yao Yao was hidden. I closed my eyes again, thought, turn on, and she reappeared. She had shifted onto her side, her back to me. I smiled. I could control it at will. No more awkward accidents. Then, a thought hit me. Could I use this to see the numbers on scratch-off lottery tickets? Besides looking at beautiful women, that was the first thing on my mind. My father's hospital bill was 150,000 yuan. With this power, I didn't need a bank loan. I could just win the money. I headed out and ran into Bai Shaoling in the living room. She gave me a fierce glare before sitting on the sofa to put on a face mask. I cleared my throat awkwardly and hurried downstairs. I walked to the lottery shop in our complex. The owner was old Zhang, a man in his 50s. He greeted me warmly. Xiao Fan, haven't seen you in a while. What are you getting today? Uncle Zhang, I'm skipping the draw today. I'll just take a few scratch-offs, I said. Sure thing. Pick a winner. I walked to the counter and looked at the thick stack of tickets. I activated my vision. My heart hammered against my ribs. It worked. I could see the numbers hidden under the silver coating. I scanned the first few. Nothing. I picked them up one by one, holding them close to my eyes. I went through 5 tickets, all losers. The 6th one was a 10 yuan winner. That was a terrible hit rate. The ticket cost 10 yuan, so if I'd bought those 6, I would have spent 60 to win 10. I'd be down 50 bucks. I kept looking. I scanned another dozen and found that the biggest prize was only 50 yuan. The odds were pathetic. Without X-ray vision, anyone playing this was just throwing money away. How's the selection going, Xiao Fan? Uncle Zhang saw me lingering and walked over with a smile. Want me to pick one for you? No thanks, I'm still looking, I said, shaking my head. Suddenly, my eyes locked onto a specific ticket. It was loaded. There were 10 yuan prizes, 20 yuan prizes, 50s, and 100s. Added together, it was a 1,000 yuan winner. I reached out and gripped the ticket firmly in my hand. I didn't stop there. I kept searching through the pile. Soon, my eyes caught another one, a 500 yuan winner. Uncle Zhang, you got any more? I asked. I had already scanned everything on the counter. Aside from the 2 big ones I found, the rest were trash. 10 yuan here, 20 there. The biggest of the losers was only 100. I didn't care about those. I wanted the real money. Of course I do, Uncle Zhang said. He started rummaging behind the counter and pulled out a fresh, sealed box of scratch-offs. He set it down in front of me. These are unopened. They usually sell by the book. You want a whole book? Can't I just buy them individually? I asked. Uncle Zhang looked conflicted. I mean, I can. But once I break a pack, they're harder to sell. Most regulars like to buy the whole book for the thrill. Let me just look, I said. I stared at the sealed packs. My vision pierced through the packaging, seeing the numbers stacked on top of each other. It was harder this way. Looking at a single ticket was easy, but looking through a thick stack required intense focus to see the prizes at the bottom. Uncle Zhang watched me with a strange look. He didn't understand why I was just staring at the box like a statue. I ignored him and sorted through the packs. Finally, I found it. Hidden in one of the books was a single ticket worth 1,000 yuan. The rest in that pack were just small change. Each book had 10 tickets. 10 yuan per ticket meant 100 for the book. I grabbed that specific book and the 2 winning tickets I'd found earlier. I handed Uncle Zhang 120 yuan. I've got a feeling about this, Xiao Fan. Uncle Zhang chuckled, taking the money. You're going to hit something big. I started scratching right there on the counter. Uncle Zhang watched for a second, then went back to his computer to play cards. It took me a few minutes to finish all 12 tickets. The total payout was 2,500 yuan. Uncle Zhang, I won, I said, sliding the 3 winning tickets across the glass. His eyes nearly popped out of his head. He grabbed his glasses, shoved them onto his face, and leaned in close. 2,500? He looked at me like I was an alien. In all his years running this shop, he'd never seen someone buy 12 tickets and hit 3 major prizes at once. Most people were lucky to find one 500 yuan winner in a whole day. Xiao Fan, I told you. Luck is on your side. He was clearly envious, but he was a professional. He made the transfer to my phone immediately. I had spent 120 and walked out with 2,500. A clean profit of 2,380. But one shop wasn't enough. I needed 150,000. I needed to move fast. I looked around the shop one last time. I had scanned almost everything Uncle Zhang had, and there was nothing left but crumbs. It made sense why so few people got rich doing this. The odds were garbage. The next shop was about 2 kilometers away. My electric scooter was trashed, but Jean Biao had given me 5,000 yuan to buy a new one. For now, I just scanned a shared rental bike and pedaled off. The second shop was crowded. 4 or 5 guys were huddled around, talking about numbers and scratching tickets. The owner greeted me warmly, but I just told him I was browsing. I picked up a stack of scratch-offs and activated my vision. I was getting faster. I discarded ticket after ticket. This shop had plenty of winners, but they were small. 1 out of every 3 tickets was a 10 yuan win, which really just meant you got your money back. Finally, I found 3 tickets worth 1,000 each and 1 for 500. To avoid looking too suspicious, I bought 30 tickets in one go. The owner beamed, happy to take my money. I scratched them quickly. When I handed over the winners, the owner gasped. Holy crap! 3,500? He shouted. The other players crowded around me instantly. Damn, brother. How did you do that? You're loaded. Teach me the trick, man, one guy pleaded. Is there a secret? My secret. I looked at them. I just buy 30 at a time and scratch. The excitement died down instantly. They figured it was just raw luck and deep pockets. They went back to their own games, muttering about how lucky I was. Even the owner thought I just got a lucky break. I took my winnings and left. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't stay in one area for too long. If I hit every shop on the block, people would notice. I needed to spread it out. One shop, 3,000 yuan. To get to my goal, I'd have to hit dozens of shops. I rode 10 kilometers further out, ready to put in the work. By nightfall, I was sitting on a street corner, frowning. I had hit over a dozen shops, but the big prizes were rare. Most shops only had a few thousand in total winnings available. My total was now sitting at 50,000 yuan. It was a lot, but the shops were all closing for the night. I grabbed a cheap bowl of noodles at a roadside stall, thinking. Then it hit me. Panjiayuan night market, I whispered. I stood up and hailed a taxi. Panjiayuan was the most famous antique market in the city. Ancient pottery, calligraphy, jewelry, it was all there. If you had the eye for it, you could turn a few hundred yuan into 1,000,000 overnight. If you didn't, you'd lose your shirt on a fake. The night market was even more crowded than the daytime one. When the taxi dropped me off, I was greeted by a sea of people. Stalls lined the streets, covered in relics and dusty treasures. I activated my X-ray vision and started scanning the first stall I saw. Pots, jars, statues. All fake. Every single one. The stall owner saw me looking and turned on the charm. Little brother, look at this. A jade fish pendant. Very rare. For you? Only 5,000 yuan. I looked at the jade fish. It was nothing but cheap glass. I didn't just fall off a turnip truck. I lived near Panjiayuan, and I knew what a real jade fish pendant was supposed to look like. Real ones were white with slight yellow mottling. They had small heads, long bodies, and no scales. The body should curve like a bow with the head and tail swept upward. This thing in the stall owner's hand. It was yellow. He was trying to pass off a piece of cheap yellow jade as a masterpiece. The owner saw the look in my eyes and realized I knew my stuff. He gave a dry laugh and reached into a backpack behind him. His movements were mysterious, almost reverent. He pulled out a piece of jade that looked absolutely filthy. Little brother, take a look at this Qing jade double crane pendant, he whispered. This is the real deal. I don't show this to just anyone. I activated my vision and focused. The pendant was about 6 centimeters long, slightly greenish-white. It depicted 2 cranes, their heads facing each other, wings and claws interlocking as if they were about to take flight. Suddenly, a string of text flashed in my mind. Qing Jade Double Crane Pendant. Origin, Song Dynasty. Former collection of the Qing Imperial Palace. Authentic. Value, 3 million yuan. My heart nearly stopped. 3 million? This guy actually had a real treasure. My hands trembled slightly, If I could pull this off, my father's medical bills would be covered in a single stroke. You've got a good eye, the owner muttered. This is Song Dynasty work. Very auspicious. Taoism flourished back then, and Emperor Huizong loved cranes. This symmetrical layout started in the Tang Dynasty, but the double crane motif really took off in the song. I knew he was telling the truth, but I couldn't let him see that. I had to play the part of a cocky amateur to drive the price down. Are you trying to hustle me? I asked, putting on a skeptical face. If this was real, why would you be selling it to a random guy on the street? The owner sighed, looking sincere. Look, we're like old friends already. It's my first day setting up a stall here. Tell you what, since you're my first customer, I'll give you a flat price. 30,000 yuan, and it's yours. I laughed. 30,000. I'm a regular at Panjiayuan. This is a nice imitation, but do I look like a fool? I held up 3 fingers. I'll give you 300 bucks. Get out of here, the owner snapped, his face turning red. It cost me more than 300 just to buy it from the countryside. Go on, get lost. Come on, be reasonable, I said, keeping my voice steady. An imitation like this costs a few yuan to make. 300 is a huge profit for you. I'm not selling. He stuffed the jade into his pocket and sat down on a stool, crossing his arms and ignoring me. I frowned. I couldn't let this go. Even if he wouldn't budge, I was willing to pay the 30,000. It was worth 100 times that, but I had to play the game. Fine, I said. Give me a real number. 30,000, he said flatly. I'll give you 800. 30,000. Not a cent less. Then forget it. I'm leaving. I turned around and started walking away without a single backward glance. The owner's jaw dropped. He was trying to play hardball, but he didn't expect me to actually walk. Just as I was about 10 steps away, he panicked. Wait, little brother, wait, he shouted, running up and grabbing my arm. 3,000. Give me 3,000 and it's yours. 800, I repeated, staring him down. Take it or leave it. He looked at me for a long time, trying to find a crack in my resolve. Finally, he let out a pained groan and pulled the jade back out. He wiped it with his sleeve, looking like he was losing his soul. Fine, fine. 800. I'm losing my shirt on this deal. He pulled out a QR code for the payment. My heart was racing, but I kept my face like stone. I pulled out my phone to scan the code. Hold on, a voice boomed from the side. How much for that jade? I'll take it. A middle-aged man in a traditional suit came marching over. He moved with a heavy, confident stride. I didn't wait. I hit the pay button instantly. Beep. The transaction went through. The owner tried to pull his hand back when he saw a new potential buyer, but it was too late. The money's sent, I said, reaching out. The jade is mine. The owner hesitated, checked his phone, and reluctantly handed it over. As soon as my fingers closed around the cold stone, the middle-aged man grabbed my hand. Little brother, how much did you just pay? I'll buy it from you for double right now. He looked desperate. I pulled my hand back. The owner's eyes widened. Double? You mean 1,600? I'll give you 2,000, the man said to me, ignoring the owner. Wait, what? The owner yelled. 2,000. Give it back. I'll refund your money. I'm selling it to him. I looked at the owner calmly. You're new to the market, aren't you? The deal is done. Money has changed hands. There's no backing out. I don't care. I'm calling the market managers, the owner shouted. Go ahead, I smiled. I'd love to tell the managers how you're trying to break a completed deal. The owner went pale and shut up. He knew he didn't have a leg to stand on, but he looked like he wanted to cry. The middle-aged man took a deep breath and calmed himself down. My name is Zhang Daolin. I own the Wanbao Gallery just up the street. I'm very serious about this piece. Name your price. I'm not selling, I said, tucking the jade into my pocket. I'm taking it home for good luck. I started walking, and Zhang Daolin followed me like a lost puppy. He chased me through 3 different streets until I finally agreed to go to his gallery just to talk. Inside the Wanbao Gallery, he poured me a high-end tea. He was practically vibrating with excitement. Little brother, you found a massive leak today, Zhang said. That stall owner had no idea. Look, I'll be fair. I'll give you 500,000 yuan for it. I took a slow sip of the tea. I knew he was testing me. Most people my age would have fainted at the offer of 500,000. Mr. Zhang, I said quietly. If you know it's real, then you know it's worth 3 million. You think I'm that easy to fool. Zhang's smile froze. He realized I wasn't just some lucky kid. I knew exactly what I was holding. All right, he said, dropping the act. Since you're an expert, I won't beat around the bush. Give me a number. 3 million, I said. Zhang let out a bitter laugh. 3 million? That's the full market value. If I pay you 3 million, I don't make a profit. You have to leave a little room for me to breathe. It's worth 3 million, I replied, looking him in the eye. Selling it to you for that price is perfectly fair. If you don't want it, I'll just take it to an auction house, I said calmly. I'm sure I can get more than 3 million there. Lin Yuan, that's me. I watched Zhang Daolin's face drop. He was speechless. He knew I was right. Sure, an auction would take a commission fee, but if two experts started a bidding war, the price could skyrocket past 3 million in minutes. Little brother, Zhang said, his voice serious now. How about this? I'll give you 2.8 million. I'll take a small 200,000 profit for myself. Think of it as an investment in our future. If you find more goods like this, bring them to me. I won't let you lose out. 2.8 million yuan. It was slightly under market value, but I felt my fingers tap against the table as I thought it over. Zhang was a professional. If he used his connections, he could probably flip this piece for 3.5 million. But for me, the value was in the relationship. In the antique world, knowing the price is one thing, but finding a buyer with immediate cash is another. Without a buyer, a treasure is just a piece of stone. Fine. Deal, I said, nodding. Zhang beamed. We exchanged phone numbers, and he didn't waste a second. He initiated the bank transfer right there. When my phone buzzed with the notification, 2.8 million yuan, my heart did a violent somersault. I was an overnight millionaire. I felt a little dizzy as Zhang walked me to the door. I stared at the zeros on my screen. I finally had the money for my father's medical bills. I called my mom immediately. Mom, take Dad for the surgery now, I told her. If the money isn't enough, tell me. It's enough? The doctor said 15,000 is the limit, she stammered. Xiao Fan, where did you get all this money? Don't worry about that, Mom. Just get Dad healthy. If the county hospital can't handle it, we'll move him to a hospital in the capital. Money isn't an issue anymore. I hung up and headed back to my rental apartment, feeling like I was floating. 2 million yuan was a lot, but in a city like this, it could barely buy me a bathroom in a decent neighborhood. I decided to just keep it in the bank for now. When I opened the door to the apartment, I saw my roommate, Yao Yao, walking out of her room. She had her hair in a high ponytail and was wearing a crop top with a denim miniskirt that showed off her long, pale legs. She looked incredibly attractive. I couldn't help it. I activated my X-ray vision. My eyes traced the curves of her body, seeing everything beneath the clothes. She was perfectly toned, with a slim waist and defined abs. Hey, Earth to Lin Yuan. Yao Yao snapped, waving a hand in front of my face. I blinked and deactivated the power instantly. I know I'm pretty, but you don't have to drool, she teased. Wipe your mouth. I was just lost in thought. I coughed, trying to play it cool. Whatever. It's my birthday tonight. You coming out with us? Of course, I said. I wouldn't miss it. Good. We're just waiting for Xiao Ling to get back from school, Yao Yao said, walking over to the sofa and lounging with her legs crossed. I stepped out onto the balcony to have a smoke. Both of my female roommates hated the smell, so this was my only sanctuary. As I lit up, I looked down at the street and saw a familiar figure. It was my other roommate, by Xiao Ling. I used my vision to get a clearer look. It was definitely her, but someone was behind her. A scruffy, middle-aged man was tailing her, keeping a creepy distance. Xiao Ling looked completely oblivious. Damn it, I muttered, dropping my cigarette and crushing it under my shoe. I bolted back into the living room. Done already? That was fast, Yao Yao joked. Are you okay? I'm going down to meet Xiao Ling. I shouted over my shoulder as I ran out. I checked the elevator display, but she wasn't there yet. My X-ray vision was still weak. I could only see through a couple of floors at a time. I sprinted down the stairs, checking the elevator doors on every floor. On the third floor, I saw them. Xiao Ling had just stepped into the elevator, and the creepy guy followed her in. I turned and raced back up the stairs toward the fifth floor. Inside the elevator, Xiao Ling was trembling. She knew something was wrong. She didn't recognize this man, and even worse, he hadn't pressed a button. He was just standing behind her, staring. She tried to text Yao Yao and me, but there was no signal in the elevator. She was trapped. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open on the 5th floor. Xiaoling practically ran out into the hallway, but the man stepped out right after her, his pace slow and steady. I was standing right by the elevator when the door slid open. As soon as Xiaoling stepped out, I marched straight toward her. The moment she saw me, her eyes lit up like I was a lifeline. She lunged forward, throwing her arms around me and burying herself in my chest. I could feel her entire body trembling. She was absolutely terrified. I looked past her, my eyes narrowing as I glared at the scruffy middle-aged man behind her. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice cold. The man didn't flinch. He looked incredibly calm, almost bored. "Who am I? What's it to you? I'm just here to look at an apartment. Is that a crime?" He stepped out of the elevator with total composure, pulled out his phone, and started scrolling as if he were looking for a contact. Then, he turned around and walked right back into the elevator. I watched him go, feeling a strange sense of unease. His acting was flawless. If I hadn't seen him stalking her from the balcony, I would have believed he really was just a guy who got off on the wrong floor. Since he hadn't actually touched her, I had no excuse to get physical. I just stood there, watching the floor indicator lights as the elevator headed down. He wasn't going to the 6th floor. He was leaving. "Don't be scared," I said, patting Xiaoling's back gently. "We're going home. He's gone." Xiaoling looked back cautiously. When she saw the hallway was empty, she let out a massive sigh of relief. A second later, her face turned bright red. She realized she was still clinging to me and quickly stepped back, tucking a stray hair behind her ear. She followed me back into our apartment, her head down. "What? You were followed all the way to the door by some creep?" Yao Yao exploded off the sofa the moment she heard what happened. She looked like a cornered kitten with its fur standing on end, pushing up her sleeves like she was ready for a fight. "Don't let me catch that guy," she hissed. "If I find out he's still hanging around, I'll make sure he never has kids. Xiaoling, next time he follows you, take off your high heels and aim for the groin." Xiaoling shivered at the mention of a next time. Her face went pale again. "Maybe we should move? We can find a new place, the 3 of us together. I'm really scared. He didn't get what he wanted today, so who knows if he'll try again tomorrow. I won't always be lucky enough to run into Lin Yuan." "Don't worry," Yao Yao said, hugging her friend. "I'll start teaching you how to punch tomorrow. We'll turn him into a eunuch." "We are moving," I said, walking in from the balcony. "We need to find a new complex. This place is too open. Anyone can just wander in." I didn't tell them everything right away, but when I had looked down from the balcony earlier with my X-ray vision, I saw the man meeting another guy in a dark corner downstairs. They were whispering and looking up at our 5th floor window. This wasn't a random act. It was a planned hit. When I told the girls about the accomplice, the room went silent. Even Yao Yao stopped acting tough. One creep was manageable, but 2 grown men were a different story. "I'll look for a new place over the next few days," I promised. "Once we find a good spot, we leave." The girls nodded, still shaken. "Okay," Yao Yao said, trying to force a smile. "Let's go to the bar now. It's my birthday, and I'm not letting some creep ruin it." We headed to Hohai Bar Street, the most crowded and vibrant nightlife spot in the city. The streets were packed with stylish people and girls in short skirts. As we walked toward a club called Godzilla, I couldn't help but flick my X-ray vision on for a second, taking in the view of the crowd. I shook my head and turned it off as we walked inside. This was where Yao Yao worked as a DJ. She was pretty famous here, and the owner, a rich guy who ran the place just for fun, had already reserved the best booth for us. "I'm buying tonight, so drink up," Yao Yao shouted over the music. Then she turned to us. "I have to start my set, but I'll join you guys soon." "You're working on your birthday?" Xiaoling asked, stunned. "It won't stop me from celebrating." Yao Yao winked before heading up to the stage. That left just me and Xiaoling at the booth. The music was loud, the lights were flashing, and the energy was high. To take her mind off the stalking incident, I grabbed the dice cup. "Let's play," I suggested. After a few drinks, the tension finally started to melt away. Xiaoling leaned in close to my ear, her breath warm. "Drinking is boring. Let's play truth or dare instead." "You're on," I said. We rolled the dice to see who could guess the numbers. I lost the first round. "Truth or dare," she laughed. "Truth." She leaned in, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Who do you like more, Me or Yao Yao? I didn't even blink. Only kids choose. I'm an adult. I like you both. Men are all the same, she teased, though she was smiling. In the next round, she lost. She chose truth. I leaned in and looked her up and down. What color is your underwear tonight? You pervert. She blushed deep red and punched my shoulder. Hey, you chose truth, I reminded her. Come on, tell me. Guess, she challenged, a playful smirk on her lips. What do I get if I'm right? I asked, my own smile turning a bit wicked. If you're right, I'll let you kiss me. That was all the motivation I needed. I hadn't looked at her with my powers earlier out of respect, but she was practically begging for it now. I focused my mind and activated the vision. In an instant, the clothes vanished. I saw everything. She was wearing black lace. I leaned into her ear, my breath brushing against her skin, and whispered, black lace. Xiaoling froze. A shiver ran through her. You creep. Did you peek while I was changing earlier? She started drumming her fists against my chest, her face burning. She had changed right before we left the house. There was no way I could have known. I didn't need to peek, I said, catching her hands and laughing. You guys hang your laundry on the balcony all the time. I see it whenever I go out for a smoke. So was I right? No, she huffed, turning her head away. But she couldn't hide the confusion in her eyes. She was dying to know how I had guessed it so perfectly. I have X-ray vision. Should I tell you? I teased. I was telling the absolute truth, but I said it with a smirk. Bai Xiaoling rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Yeah, right, she scoffed. If you have X-ray vision, then I'm a mind reader with super hearing. You don't believe me? I shrugged. I even know what color Yao Yao's underwear is. Want to bet? Impossible, Xiaoling said, her voice full of doubt. Let's make it interesting then, I said, a wicked idea forming. If I lose, I'll make breakfast for a month. But if I win, you have to wear a maid outfit and wake me up every morning for the next 30 days. You? Fine, she snapped. But if I win, you're doing the laundry, the grocery shopping, the cooking, and you're scrubbing the toilets for a month. Just then, Yao Yao finished her DJ set and walked over to our booth, grabbing a drink to cool down. Xiao Ling and I stared at her, our expressions unreadable. What? Yao Yao asked, looking confused. Is there something on my face? Go on, Xiao Ling nudged me. Tell us. White, I said without a second of hesitation. Xiao Ling immediately leaned in and whispered into Yao Yao's ear, asking for the truth. Yao Yao's face turned bright red instantly. She shot me a look of pure shock and nodded slowly to Xiao Ling. It's true, Yao Yao stammered. It's white. How did he know? Xiao Ling jumped up from the sofa, her jaw dropping. No way. He actually got it right. The realization hit her. According to our bet, she was now officially my personal maid for the next month. Her face went from shock to pure fury in seconds. You pervert, she yelled, grabbing me by the collar. You've been spying on us while we change, haven't you? I told you, I have X-ray vision, I said, holding up my hands in defense. You just didn't believe me. Yao Yao joined in, her face just as red. He's right, Xiaoling. He guessed both of us perfectly. There's no way he isn't a voyeur. If you wanted to see us that badly, you could have just asked. Peeking is just low. I blinked, stunned by her logic. Wait, you'd actually let me see? In your dreams. Yao Yao shouted. Get him. The two of them pounced on me, raining down playful punches. They each grabbed one of my ears, pulling me back and forth like a tug-of-war rope. Spill it, Xiaoling demanded. When did you install the hidden cameras? I didn't. I'm not that kind of guy, I insisted, though it was hard to sound convincing while being pummeled. Then how? I had to think fast. I couldn't exactly explain the mystical golden light in my eyes. Look, you guys hang your laundry on the balcony every day. I see what's there. Today, I noticed a pair of black lace and a pair of white ones were missing from the rack. It wasn't hard to figure out. The girls went quiet. They looked at each other and let out a long sigh of relief. They actually bought it. Anyway, I said, turning my gaze back to Xiao Ling, you still haven't given me my prize. Before the underwear color bet, we had a smaller wager. If I guessed her color right, she had to kiss me. That doesn't count. Xiao Ling stammered, her face flushing. Oh, come on, Xiao Ling. Yao Yao teased, clearly enjoying the drama now that she wasn't the target. A bet is a bet. Pay up. Fine, Xiao Ling huffed. She leaned in toward my ear, but I had other plans. Just as she moved in to plant a quick peck on my cheek, I turned my head. Our lips met squarely. She froze. Her eyes went wide. She started pounding on my chest with her tiny fists, her face burning like a forest fire. I just laughed and caught her wrists. Xiaoling, Yao Yao whispered, looking stunned. Was that your first kiss? Xiaoling went completely silent. She looked down at the floor, her shoulders tense. No way, I muttered, the laughter dying in my throat. You're the campus belle of the media university. You've seriously never had a boyfriend. Xiaoling didn't look up. She just buried her face in Yao Yao's chest and gave a tiny, almost invisible nod. Lin Yuan, you jerk, Yao Yao yelled, though she was hugging Xiaoling tight. You stole her first kiss. You better take responsibility for this, or I'll make sure you never have kids. Hey, I'm a responsible man, I said, my heart skipping a beat. I really hadn't expected her to be that innocent. I'll take care of her. Come here, Xiaoling. I opened my arms for a hug, but they both grabbed pillows and started beating me again. Suddenly, the music cut out. The lead singer on stage grabbed the mic. Tonight is a special night for our favorite DJ, Yao Yao. It's her birthday. Let's show her some love. The crowd erupted. A massive cake was wheeled out by the bar owner, a man named Xiahua. Everyone started singing Happy Birthday, and the atmosphere shifted from a wild party to a warm celebration. Yao Yao was moved to tears, but she kept her tough girl persona up, thanking everyone before blowing out the candles. As she started handing out slices of cake, Xiahua approached us. Yao Yao, happy birthday. This is for you, he said, handing her a designer handbag. It looked like a limited edition worth tens of thousands of yuan. Thanks, brother Hua. Yao Yao beamed, clutching the bag. Xiahua nodded, but then his gaze shifted to me. I felt a sudden prickle of hostility. With my new abilities, I was hyper-aware of people's intentions. When he looked at me, there was a cold disdain. But when his eyes landed on Xiaoling, they turned predatory. He was looking her up and down with a hidden, greasy lust that made my skin crawl. I knew right then, this guy was bad news. Yao Yao, Xiahua said, his voice dripping with fake politeness. Aren't you going to introduce your friends? Oh, brother Hua, these are my roommates, Yao Yao said happily. They came tonight just to celebrate with me. Yao Yao introduced me and Xiaoling to Xiahua. When my name came up, Xiahua didn't even glance at me. His eyes were glued to Xiaoling, scanning her with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Great to meet you, Xiahua said, reaching out to grab Xiaoling's hand. Xiaoling hesitated. She clearly felt the same discomfort I did. Before his hand could reach hers, I stepped in and gripped his palm firmly. Nice to meet you too, I said, staring him down. Xiahua's face soured instantly. He gave a stiff, awkward nod and yanked his hand back. He even wiped his palm on his pants as if I were covered in filth. Brother Hua, it's my birthday, Yao Yao said, trying to break the tension. She raised her glass. Let's all have a drink. Cheers. I could feel Xiahua's eyes darting back and forth between me and the girls. He looked at me with pure hatred, but when he looked at Xiaoling and Yao Yao, it was pure lust. I stepped in front of Xiaoling, physically blocking his view of her. She grabbed my arm, leaning into me. I felt her relax slightly, finding a small sense of safety behind my shoulder. Xiaoling, how about a drink? Just us, Xiahua said, ignoring my presence entirely. He stepped around me, holding out a glass to her. Xiaoling looked panicked. She glanced at me, her eyes pleading for help. I picked up a glass and stood my ground. Sorry, she's not feeling well tonight. I'll drink for her. Xiahua's expression turned ice cold. He looked at me like I was a bug he wanted to crush. What the hell are you? You think you're worthy of drinking with me? The music seemed to fade. The surrounding tables went silent. The atmosphere turned heavy. Brother Hua, Lin Yuan is my roommate. Yao Yao snapped, her temper finally flaring up. You're crossing the line. Yao Yao was a firebrand. Even though Xiahua was her boss, she wasn't about to let him insult her friend. Especially not on her birthday. Yao Yao, why are you living with a guy like this? Xiahua turned to her, his voice full of fake pity. I told you already. Just be my woman, and I'll buy you an apartment tomorrow. Who I live with is none of your damn business, Yao Yao barked. Forget it. I'm never going to be your woman. Take your bag back. She didn't just hand it to him. She hurled the expensive designer bag straight at his chest. Then, she grabbed my hand and Xiao Ling's hand, pulling us toward the exit. Yao Yao, you walk out now and you're finished. Xiahua shouted behind us. I'd rather leave than stay here and watch you play pretend, she yelled back without turning around. If you leave today, don't bother coming back, Xiahua threatened, his voice dropping to a low growl. And forget about this month's salary. You won't see a cent. Yao Yao didn't skip a beat. She threw a middle finger over her shoulder. With my skills, I can find a job at any bar in the city. Keep the money. Xiahua stood there, teeth clenched, watching her walk away. He had wanted Yao Yao from the day she started working here. She was a talented DJ and a huge draw for his business, but he wanted her in his bed, not just on the stage. Usually, women fell for him within days. A little money, a little power, and they were hooked. But Yao Yao was different. Even the offer of a 10 million yuan apartment hadn't moved her. It only made him want to conquer her more. And now, seeing Xiao Ling, he had a new target. He figured if he couldn't get Yao Yao tonight, Xiao Ling would be a fine consolation prize. But I was in the way. The fact that I lived with them made him burn with jealousy. To him, I was a nobody, yet I was the one sharing a home with the two women he craved. Stop right there, he commanded. The bar security moved instantly, blocking our path to the door. Xiahua walked over, flanked by his lackeys. Yao Yao, think carefully, he said, acting like he was still in control. If you walk out that door, I'll make sure every bar owner in this district knows your name. No one will hire you. Oh, I'm so scared, Yao Yao mocked. She shoved one of the guards aside. Move. The guard hesitated. Everyone liked Yao Yao, but they feared Xiahua more. Hold them, Xiahua barked. The group of thugs closed in, surrounding the three of us. What now? You're going to use force? Yao Yao asked, her voice dripping with contempt. Yao Yao, you know I care about you, Xiahua said smoothly. I just want to drink. How about this? The two girls stay and drink with me, and I'll let this guy go. Not a chance, Yao Yao said instantly. Xiahua's face darkened. He turned his gaze toward me, his eyes full of malice. Fine. If you won't stay, then I'll just have to break his legs. Boys, take him. He waved a hand, and his thugs lunged at me. They tried to grab me, intending to drag me into one of the dark private rooms in the back. Xiahua had done this before. He owned this place. He believed that in this world, people like me were disposable. To him, breaking a nobody's legs was something he could settle with a few 100,000 yuan and a phone call to his connections. He thought I was an easy target. He was wrong. Xiahua didn't care about the law. He had done this many times before. Usually, a few 100,000 yuan was enough to silence a victim. If they were stubborn, 1,000,000 yuan made any lawsuit disappear. To him, money was just a number, and people's lives were even cheaper. Stop, Yao Yao shouted. She knew Xiahua's temper. He wasn't bluffing. She was terrified that he would actually follow through and have my legs broken right there in the bar. What's wrong, beautiful? Xiahua asked with a cruel smirk. Have you thought it over? Think carefully before you answer. If you don't have a drink with me, his legs are gone. Yao Yao grit her teeth. I could see the internal struggle on her face, but for my sake, she took a deep breath. Fine, she said, her voice trembling. I'll drink with you, but you have to promise to let him go and not hurt him. Of course, Xiahua said, looking smug. I'm a man of my word. He shot me a triumphant look, enjoying his victory. But I wasn't done. Yao Yao, don't do it, I said firmly. Trust me, he doesn't dare touch me. Xiahua's face twisted in rage. You really have a death wish. Get him. He waved his hand, and his thugs surged forward. Yao Yao panicked. She grabbed a wine glass from the table, desperate to de-escalate the situation. Stop. I said I'd drink. But Xiahua's greed had grown. Drinking isn't enough anymore. Now, you're coming home with me tonight. If you don't, I'll break both his legs and his arms. You bastard. Yao Yao screamed. My expression darkened. I looked Xiahua dead in the eye and pointed a finger at him. You're pushing it, you red underwear wearing, impotent loser. The entire area went silent. Xiahua's face turned from red to a ghostly pale. What did you just say? Red underwear, someone in the crowd whispered. The people around us started looking at Xiahua with strange expressions. Judging by his reaction, I had hit the bullseye. A grown man wearing red underwear. A girl nearby giggled. Maybe it's his zodiac year, or maybe he's just a freak. You're a closet pervert, I continued, raising my voice so the surrounding tables could hear. Not just red underwear, but red lace. You're a total creep. The bar went dead quiet. Yao Yao and Bai Xiaoling stared at me, mouths agape. Xiahua looked like he wanted to vanish into the floorboards. The fact that he was wearing red lace boxers was a secret only he should have known. He couldn't understand how I knew. You're full of crap, Xiahua roared, his voice cracking. Am I? I mocked. You know the truth. Why don't you drop your pants right now and show everyone? Are you brave enough? He wasn't. He couldn't. He stood there, frozen, feeling like a monkey in a zoo as the crowd began to murmur and point. Get him, he screamed, desperate to end the embarrassment. I pointed at the first thug rushing toward me. And you? White boxers. They've got yellow stains on them. How many weeks has it been since you changed your underwear? The man froze mid-step. He looked at me in pure horror, then instinctively looked down at his waist. He hadn't washed his underwear in a week. He turned bright red and backed away, unable to face the judging eyes of the crowd. And you? I pointed at the second guy. A grown man wearing a thong? Are you a pervert or just confused? The second thug shivered. He didn't even say a word. He just turned around and vanished into the crowd, completely humiliated. The onlookers gasped. Holy crap, Xiahua's crew is wild. I thought they were tough guys, but they're just a bunch of weirdos. I turned to a particularly large, muscular guard. And you? You're not wearing any underwear at all. What's the plan there? Looking for an infection? The big man turned crimson. He covered himself awkwardly and ran away like a shy schoolgirl. By now, a massive crowd had gathered. The loud music was still thumping, but the drama was better than the dance floor. People were holding up their phones, recording everything. Xiahua realized he had lost his window. He could have kidnapped me in the shadows, but with dozens of cameras pointed at him, he couldn't touch me without it becoming a viral sensation. Even with his connections, a public assault caught on video would be impossible to bury. Your private lives are a mess, I said, my voice like a machine gun. You act all tough on the outside, but underneath, you're all just pathetic. Xiahua cowered behind his remaining men. He saw the way Yao Yao was looking at him, with pure, unadulterated disgust. That look hurt him more than any punch could. Grab him, Xiahua hissed under his breath. Boss, we can't, one of his men whispered urgently. There are too many people. Look at the phones. If we move now, it's a felony on camera. We'll all go down. I stood my ground, calm and smiling. Go ahead. Touch me. I'm right here. Xiahua was powerless. He knew that if this went to the internet, investigators would start digging into his other crimes. He couldn't risk the heat. Fine, I said, seeing he was paralyzed. If you're too scared to move, we're leaving. You're dead, Xiahua hissed through clenched teeth. Let me give you a free fortune reading, I laughed. You're wearing red today, but luck isn't on your side. You better watch your back, because those red lace panties won't protect you from what's coming. I grabbed Yao Yao and Xiaoling's hands and pushed through the crowd. We walked straight out of the bar and into the night air. Xiahua watched us go, his eyes burning with hatred. He signaled to his men. Follow them. Wait until they're in the dark. Then break his legs. Bring the women to my bed tonight. Don't worry, boss. We'll handle it. 7 or 8 thugs slipped out of the bar, blending into the street shadows. I didn't need to turn around. My X-ray vision locked onto them immediately. They were trailing us, tucked behind cars and alley corners. Lin Yuan, where are we going? Yao Yao asked, glancing back nervously. I think they're following us. I squeezed her hand. I know. Let them come. Yao Yao was trembling. She clutched my hand tighter, her eyes darting toward the shadows behind us. Let's keep moving, Lin Yuan. We need to find a taxi or something. No, I said, stopping in my tracks. Let's wait for them. Yao Yao and Xiaoling stared at me like I'd lost my mind. We were being hunted by a pack of thugs, and I wanted to stand still? It felt like a death wish. Don't worry, I told them, my voice steady. I know exactly what I'm doing. We stood there in the middle of the dimly lit street. The footsteps behind us faltered. The thugs were confused. They didn't expect us to just wait for them. They hovered in the darkness, whispering among themselves, unsure if I was setting a trap. Finally, they realized I wasn't moving. They stepped out of the shadows and surrounded us. There were 7 or 8 of them, led by a burly man with a shaved head and arms covered in dark tattoos. "Take them," the bald leader growled. His men stepped forward, reaching for us. I didn't flinch. Instead, I looked the leader straight in the eye. "Hey, Changji," I said loudly. "Is the white tiger fun?" The bald man froze. His face went pale, and a visible shiver ran through his body. His men didn't understand. They kept moving toward me, but Changji suddenly threw up his hand. "Stop," he barked. "Why, boss?" one of them asked, confused. "We've got them right here." I said stop. "Back off," Changji yelled. He wiped sweat from his forehead and walked toward me alone. He leaned in, his voice a desperate whisper. "Brother, you can't just say things like that. You don't know what you're talking about." I smiled and leaned into his ear. "I saw what you did in the bathroom tonight. How did it feel, sleeping with the boss's woman?" Changji's entire body began to shake. He looked at me with pure terror. He thought he had been invisible. He thought he was safe. He had no idea that my X-ray vision had caught every second of his betrayal. "How? How do you know?" he stammered. "It doesn't matter how I know," I whispered. "What matters is what Xie Hua will do to you when he finds out you were with his girlfriend. Do you think he'll let you live?" "Please," he gasped, his eyes pleading. "Anything. I'll do anything. Just don't tell him." Xie Hua was a regular at that bar, but he was possessive. He had a steady girlfriend, the woman who had been clinging to his arm earlier. Changji had snuck off with her for a quick encounter, thinking the stalls would hide his secret. He was wrong. "Go back and tell Xie Hua I've taken an interest in his bar," I said calmly. "In a few days, I'm coming to take over the management rights." I reached out and patted his bald head. 3 times. Hard. His men bristled, ready to jump me for the insult, but Changji held them back with a frantic gesture. He stood there and took the humiliation. He didn't have a choice. I turned my back on them and walked away with the girls. "Boss, we're just letting them go," one of the thugs asked. "Shut up," Changji snapped, watching us leave. "Go back and tell Xie Hua they escaped in the dark. We lost them." Even though they worked for Xie Hua, Changji was their direct leader. They obeyed him. The danger was gone. Yao Yao and Xiao Ling were speechless. Once we were a safe distance away, they practically exploded with questions. "What did you say to him?" Yao Yao asked. "He looked like he'd seen a ghost." I laughed. "Remember that woman with Xie Hua? The one on his arm?" "Yeah," Yao Yao said. "His main girlfriend." "What?" I told them exactly what I'd seen through the bathroom walls. Their jaws dropped. They looked at me with a mix of shock and suspicion. "How could you possibly know that?" Xiaoling asked. She squinted at me. "Wait, do you actually have X-ray vision?" I grinned at her. "If I told you I did, would you believe me?" "No way," Xiaoling said, shaking her head. "Me neither," Yao Yao added. "If you had X-ray vision, I'd have 1,000-mile sight." The tension of the night finally broke. We went back to the apartment, and even though the party had been ruined, I bought a small cake and we celebrated Yao Yao's birthday properly. Later that night, after a shower, I checked my phone. I had a message from Zhang Daolin, the gallery owner. "Lin Yuan, there's a private antique trade fair tomorrow at 5 p.m. Do you want to come?" "I'll be there," I replied. The next morning, Zhang Daolin called to confirm. "I'll meet you at Panjiayuan. It's an exclusive event. You need a membership to get in, but as a member, I can bring you as my guest. After tonight, you'll be a member too." At 4:30 p.m., I met him at his shop, Wanbao Pavilion. He was waiting for me with a wide smile and a firm handshake. He led me to the parking lot where a sleek, black Maybach was waiting. The car was worth well over 1,000,000 yuan. As I sat in the plush interior, a surge of ambition hit me. I used to dream about cars like this. Now, with over 2 million in the bank and my special eyes, this wasn't just a dream anymore. I could buy a house. I could buy a fleet of these cars if I wanted. I just needed to find a few more treasures. "Tonight's fair is simple," Zhang Daolin explained as he drove. "People bring items from their private collections. Most of the time, even the owners aren't 100% sure if they're real. It's all about your own eyes. If you buy a fake, you take the loss. If you find a masterpiece, you keep the profit. No regrets allowed." I felt my heart race. This was a gold mine. Other people needed decades of experience or expensive tools to spot a fake. I just needed to look. We pulled into a gated community filled with massive, luxury villas. Each of these homes was worth at least 100 million yuan. In the past, I wouldn't have even been allowed past the front gate. The guards would have chased me off. But as the Maybach rolled up, the guards recognized Zhang Daolin and bowed, waving us through. We cruised past rows of stunning mansions. I stared out the window, my eyes already beginning to glow with anticipation. I stared out the window at the rows of luxury villas passing by, and a deep sense of longing hit me. In my past life, I could have worked myself to the bone for 10 lifetimes and still never afforded a single brick in this neighborhood. But now, it wasn't just a dream. If I could use my eyes to snag a few high-end treasures at the fair tonight, I might actually have a shot at buying one of these places. Uncle Zhang, how much do these villas go for? I asked, pulling my gaze away from the glass. Zhang Daolin glanced outside casually. These? Most people couldn't even dream of it. They start at 200 million yuan. The really good ones? You're looking at 1 billion. I sucked in a breath of cold air. I thought maybe 100 million would do it, but 200 million was just the starting point. The average price was closer to 5 or 600 million. A regular person could work their whole life and not even be able to afford a single bathroom in this district. This was the heart of the capital, a place where only the most powerful and wealthy lived. The guards at the gate weren't just for show. If you weren't a resident or a known guest, getting inside was impossible. I actually have a vacant villa in here, Zhang Daolin said suddenly. If you want to stay there, I can give you the keys. I shook my head quickly. Thanks, Uncle Zhang, but I have a place to live for now. I knew he was successful, but I hadn't realized he was this rich. Owning a villa in a place like this was a whole different level of status. You're still young, Lin Yuan, he said, looking at me seriously. I believe you'll have your own villa one day. Tonight, just do your best. A small doubt flickered in my mind. We had only met once. Why was he going out of his way to mentor me and bring me to such an exclusive event? Uncle Zhang, I asked, why are you helping me like this? He smiled at me. Because you aren't an ordinary person. He explained that after he bought the jade crane pendant from me, he had taken it to several experts. Most of them couldn't be sure if it was real. It wasn't until he went to a top-tier authority that they confirmed it was genuine. More importantly, their description of the piece matched exactly what I had told him. He realized then that I had a secret, that my ability to spot a masterpiece at a glance meant I had incredible eyes. He brought me here tonight to test me. If I could really pick out the winners among the antiques tonight, I was a friend he wanted to keep for life. In his business, knowing someone who could truly see was the most valuable asset there is. I'm just a regular guy, I insisted. We'll see about that soon enough, he replied. Listen, if you see something tonight that you know is real, tell me. We can go halves on it. He had done his homework on me. He knew I lived in a shared rental and used to deliver food and run street stalls. He knew I had the eyes, but probably didn't have the capital to buy the big-ticket items. He was offering to provide the cash while I provided the expertise. We'd split the profits 50-50. I nodded without hesitation. That was exactly what I needed. I only had about 2 million yuan on me. If we found something worth tens of millions, I'd be priced out. Partnering with him was a win-win. It's a deal then, Zhang Daolin said, clearly pleased. We pulled up to a massive mansion. According to Zhang Daolin, this one was worth at least 1 billion yuan. The owner was clearly someone legendary, and he was the host of tonight's fair. 2 burly bodyguards stood at the gate, checking memberships. Once Zhang Daolin showed his card, the iron gates swung open. The driveway was lined with luxury cars, nothing under 1 million yuan, and some easily worth 10 million or more. We stepped out of the Maybach and walked toward the entrance. A line of guards stood at the door, and one stepped forward to lead us into the main hall. The interior was breathtaking. Even the rug in the foyer was worth hundreds of thousands of yuan. It was a world I couldn't even fathom. People here literally walked on a regular person's life savings. There were already dozens of people in the hall. Most were middle-aged or older, dressed in expensive, sometimes eccentric clothes. They carried themselves with the quiet confidence of people used to being in charge. As we walked in, several people greeted Zhang Daolin, but they completely ignored me. To them, I was probably just his driver or a junior relative. I felt a small sting of displacement. In a room like this, the gap in social status was a physical weight. Everyone, this is my friend, Lin Yuan, Zhang Daolin announced, pointedly introducing me. Only then did a few people nod my way, though their smiles were polite at best. Dowlin, who's the kid? A portly, middle-aged man walked over, eyeing me up and down. Changfeng, this is the young man I told you about. Lin Yuan, Zhang Dowlin said. He turned to me. Lin Yuan, meet our host for the evening, Li Changfeng. Hello, Uncle Li, I said, masking my surprise. This man looked like a typical nouveau riche big boss, but he was the owner of this billion-yuan palace. Truly, you can't judge a book by its cover. So, you're Lin Yuan, Li Changfeng said, his eyes narrowing as he studied me. I realized Zhang Daolin must have shown him the jade pendant too. They shared a knowing look, and I figured they had discussed my talent before I even arrived. Li Changfeng didn't say much more, though. He had a fare to run, and a moment later, he stepped up to start the night's proceedings. Li Changfeng exchanged a few words with Zhang Daolin before returning to the center of the hall. He clapped his hands loudly, drawing every eye in the room toward him. He announced that it was his turn to host the evening and that he would kick things off by presenting a piece from his own private collection. He pulled out a piece of jade. It was roughly 5 centimeters wide and 4 centimeters high, shaped into a thick square. At the base, there was a raised ram motif. The top featured a dragon-shaped handle. The dragon looked lean, almost thin, with horns on its head and flowing hair. Its limbs were thick, and its elbows were carved with upward flaming patterns. It was a beautiful, intricate piece. Li Changfeng admitted he had acquired it by chance. He confessed he couldn't tell if it was real or fake. He was putting it up now in hopes that someone with a keen eye could finally solve the mystery. The room went silent. Everyone stared at the jade. A few people stepped forward, taking it from his hands to examine it closely. One elderly man with a white beard studied it for several minutes before shaking his head in disappointment. He muttered that it looked real, yet felt fake, and his eyes simply weren't sharp enough to be sure. One by one, the other guests took their turns. They were all experts in their own right, people who had spent decades in the antique world. But they all reached the same conclusion. They couldn't verify it. Without a guarantee of authenticity, no one could determine its value. Li Changfeng looked crushed. He had already paid private experts to look at it, and they had all given him the same non-committal answers. He had hoped this gathering of elites would be different. It seemed his prize was destined to remain a mystery. Lin Yuan, what do you think? Zhang Daolin whispered, leaning toward me. Let me look a bit longer, I replied calmly. On the outside, I was cool. On the inside, my heart was racing. The moment I activated my X-ray vision, a flood of information hit my brain. It was a white jade dragon button seal. It was genuine. Its market value was 10 million yuan. In this entire room of experts, I was the only one who knew the truth. Since no one can identify it, I'll set a price for a blind auction, Li Changfeng said, his voice heavy with disappointment. Let's start the bidding at 1 million yuan. Increments of at least 100,000. The room stayed quiet. Nobody wanted to gamble 1 million yuan on a piece of stone that might be worth nothing. To these people, 1 million wasn't a fortune. Most were worth over 100 million, but nobody likes being the fool who buys a fake. Well, Zhang Daolin nudged me. We had a deal. If I found something real, he would provide the capital, and we would split the profits. Buy it, I said. The word was barely a breath. Zhang Daolin's eyes lit up. He didn't hesitate. He raised his hand immediately. 1 million. 1 million once. Anyone else? Li Changfeng looked at Zhang Daolin with a flash of gratitude. He clearly thought my friend was just buying it to save him from the embarrassment of a failed auction. He had no idea I had already stripped the jade of its secrets. The hammer fell. Zhang Daolin transferred the 1 million yuan on the spot. As soon as the transaction was done, he pulled me aside, his voice low and urgent. Lin Yuan, what's the story on this thing? It's a genuine white jade dragon button seal, I said. It's worth about 10 million. Zhang Daolin's face went stiff. He was trying desperately to keep his composure, but I could see the excitement in his eyes. He tucked the jade into his pocket. We had just turned 1 million into 10 million in a matter of minutes. That was a 9 million yuan profit. My share alone would be 4.5 million. He didn't doubt me for a second. He knew that even if he needed a formal appraisal later to sell it, my intuition hadn't failed him yet. Most collectors like Li Changfeng avoided formal appraisals because the fees were astronomical. They preferred to rely on personal networks first. Next up was the white-bearded old man who had looked at the jade earlier. He stepped forward and produced a bronze tiger. The moment I saw it, I felt a physical jolt go through my body. My vision flared with data. It was the Duhu tiger tally. It was a genuine artifact. Its value? 100 million yuan. I sucked in a sharp breath. The old man introduced the piece, claiming he didn't know exactly what it was. As the bronze tiger passed from hand to hand, a murmur broke out. "Isn't this the Duhu tiger tally?" someone shouted. "How did you get your hands on this?" The room erupted. Everyone knew the Duhu tiger tally. It was a legendary national treasure, the centerpiece of a famous museum's collection. "This has to be a fake," another man said, pointing at the bronze. "The real one is a museum's crown jewel. It's worth 100 million. There's no way it's here." People started pulling out their phones, searching for photos of the original. They held their screens up next to the object in the room. They were identical. Every scratch, every curve. "It's a replica," the crowd concluded. "Unless you stole the real one from the museum, this is just a very good fake." The old man looked embarrassed. He admitted he suspected it was a fake too, but it looked so incredibly real that he had to bring it just in case. Every expert he'd shown it to previously had been baffled by the craftsmanship. "Lin Yuan?" Zhang Daolin asked, looking at me. Even though he was certain it was a fake like everyone else, he couldn't help but check. "It's the real Duhu tiger tally," I said. Zhang Daolin gasped, his face turning pale. If I was right, this wasn't just an antique. This was a piece of history that shouldn't even exist in private hands. The room was dead silent. If what I said was true, it meant the crown jewel of a major museum was a fake. It was a terrifying thought. I shook my head slowly. To be honest, I didn't even know what a Duhu tiger tally was until a few minutes ago. But the gold text hovering in my vision didn't lie. My X-ray power was feeding me the truth. This object was authentic. Its real value was 100 million yuan. Zhang Daolin walked over to the old man with the white beard. He asked where the piece came from. The old man explained he'd bought it from an elderly villager in the countryside. He liked the look of it and thought it might be real, but he swore he'd never stepped foot in a museum to steal anything. Li Changfeng cut through the murmurs. He pulled out his phone, his face stern. He told us he was calling the director of the museum personally to check for any thefts. We all watched him, holding our breath. The call was quick. Li Changfeng hung up and looked at the crowd. The museum director confirmed that the Duhu tiger tally was safe in its display case. Nothing had been stolen. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. If it had been stolen, every one of us would have been in legal trouble just for being in the same room as it. The white-bearded old man looked disappointed. He ran his fingers over the bronze tiger. He'd shown it to dozens of experts who all claimed it was real, until they realized what it was supposed to be. Once they knew the real one was in a museum, they all changed their tune and called his a fake. Following the rules of the gathering, he had to name a price. He sighed and asked for 100,000 yuan. It was a symbolic gesture. Nobody was going to pay that much for a confirmed replica. I leaned in and whispered to Zhang Daolin. I told him to buy it. Zhang Daolin hesitated. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Why would he throw away 100,000 yuan on a fake? I kept my face steady. I told him it wasn't a fake. He reminded me about the phone call. The real one was in the museum. I looked him in the eye and asked him a question that made him tremble. What if the one in the museum was the fake, and this one was the original? The history of that museum piece was famous. When it was first found by a farmer, it was rejected by 3 different sets of experts. They all called it a fake. It wasn't until a museum specialist took a leap of faith that it was declared authentic. I was certain. My eyes told me this was the one from the Preqin dynasty. I suggested we buy it, take it to the museum, and compare them side by side. Zhang Daolin grit his teeth and made his choice. He raised his hand and agreed to the price. The old man looked relieved. He'd bought the thing for 20,000 yuan, and he was terrified he'd lose money on it. He swapped the tiger for the cash before Zhang Daolin could change his mind. As the transaction finished, I felt a cold, sharp gaze on the back of my neck. I turned around and saw a familiar face. It was Xiehua. The world really was a small place. He was staring at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. He looked like he wanted to tear me apart right there. I remembered last night, how I'd taken Yao Yao and Xiao Ling away right in front of him. He wasn't used to losing. I didn't flinch. Instead, I flashed him a wide, bright smile. A plan started forming in my head. If he wanted to play, I was ready. The auction continued. A middle-aged man stepped forward holding a piece of white jade carved into the shape of two lions. He claimed it was worth 5 million yuan. The piece was beautiful, clean, white, and intricately carved. It showed a large lion and a small lion playing with a ball. The man explained the history of lion carvings in China, noting how rare they were since lions weren't native to the land. I focused my vision on the jade. The golden text appeared again, drifting over the white stone. I smiled. This was going to be interesting. The middle-aged man continued his pitch, highlighting the Yuan dynasty characteristics of the jade. Everyone crowded around, passing the piece from hand to hand. They studied it under the light, listening to his detailed explanation. Even these seasoned collectors, men with decades of experience, were nodding along. It looked real. It felt real. The man sensed he had them hooked. He claimed he'd already had it appraised by experts and that its true value was 5 million yuan. But since this was a private exchange, he told us he didn't want anyone to lose out. He set the starting price at just 1 million, with increments of at least 100,000. It was a gamble. If nobody bid, someone could walk away with a steal. But if the room caught fire, the price would skyrocket. That was the draw of these private auctions. If people gave you face and stayed silent, you hit the jackpot. 1 million, someone shouted immediately. 1.5 million, another voice joined in. 1.8. 2 million. The room was buzzing. Everyone was convinced this was a genuine 5 million yuan piece. If they bought it low and flipped it at a major auction later, the profit would be massive. Of course, nobody wanted to go over 5 million. Past that point, the profit margin disappeared. 3 million. Xiahua called out. I watched him, a slight smirk playing on my lips. Zhang Daolin was getting restless beside me. He looked at the jade, then at the bidding war, and finally at me. Lin Yuan, he whispered, his voice tight. What do you think? Fake, I said. I didn't whisper. I just let the word drop like a stone. Zhang Daolin froze. He looked at the room full of experts who were all convinced it was real, then back at me. Are you sure? I knew what he was thinking. These were old players with decades of experience. If one or two people were wrong, that was normal. But if everyone was wrong, that seemed impossible. He was torn. If it was real and he passed, he was losing out on a fortune. Antiques like this only went up in value. 5 million today could be 10 million next year. He took a deep breath and looked me in the eye. Fine, I believe you. He forced himself to stay quiet, suppressing the urge to raise his hand. He'd seen me work twice already. He chose to trust his gut. We're bidding, I said suddenly. Zhang Daolin stared at me like I'd grown a second head. What? You just said it was a fake. I'm bidding personally, I said, my voice cold. Don't worry about it. I looked over at Xiahua. This was personal. I was going to handle him myself. 4.5 million, I called out. It was my first bid of the night. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me, surprised by the new voice. I could tell they thought I was just Zhang Daolin's nephew, or maybe his driver. They didn't expect me to have that kind of money. Xiahua was shaking with rage. He had finally suppressed the other bidders at 4.3 million, and I had just jumped over him by 200,000. 4.6 million, he hissed, glaring at me. His eyes were a warning, telling me to back off. 5 million, I said, not even glancing in his direction. Xiahua looked like he wanted to bite me. 5 million was the market ceiling. Anything higher was a loss. I looked at him with pure disdain and slowly raised my middle finger. That was the breaking point. Xiahua's pride snapped. He did a quick mental calculation and screamed, 5.1 million. 5.1 million once, the middle-aged man shouted, his eyes gleaming as he looked at me, hoping for more. I didn't say a word. I just folded my arms and watched Xiahua like I was watching a play. You're still too green to play with me, Xiahua huffed. He was trying to convince himself he'd won. Even at 5.1 million, he figured he could just hold it for a year or two and double his money. 5.1 million 3 times. Sold. The man handed the jade to Xiahua. The transaction went through instantly. Xiahua clutched his new prize, walking over to me with a smug grin. He tossed the jade up and down in his hand, showing off. A few people nearby offered their congratulations, jealous of his find. Congratulations, I said, smiling brightly. You just bought a fake. Great craftsmanship, though. Probably cost about 20 or 30 yuan to make. The smile slid right off Xiaohua's face. His heart skipped a beat, but he quickly masked it with anger. What did you say? The room went quiet. People looked at me, confused. I said it's a fake, I repeated calmly. It's a high-quality imitation, but it's definitely not the double lion's carving. Young man, the seller interrupted, his face darkening. Watch your mouth. I've held that piece for years. Experts confirmed it's real. He had to defend it. Even though the deal was done and there were no refunds in this circle, his reputation was on the line. Is it real? I asked. Why don't we just get an actual expert in here to look? Better yet, I've seen photos of the real double lions. The authentic piece features 2 identical lions. Your jade has 1 large lion and 1 small one. It looks more like a mother and her cub. The seller's expression shifted instantly. A few people in the crowd paused, their eyes widening as they looked closer at the jade. They had felt something was off, but they couldn't put their finger on it until now. The real one is famous, I reminded them. But I doubt many of you have actually seen it in person. Why don't you just look it up? Suddenly, everyone in the room was pulling out their phones. Someone searched for the real double lion's jade carving online. A moment later, they pulled up a photo. The real lions were exactly the same size. They weren't mismatched at all. Look at this, someone shouted, holding their phone up to the light. The crowd compared the photo to the piece in Xiaohua's hand. The authentic carving had 2 identical lions. Xiaohua's jade had 1 large and 1 small. It's a fake, someone whispered. My God, the craftsmanship is so realistic. But why such a huge flaw? People were baffled. Anyone could find this photo online. Why would a forger make such a basic mistake? Xiaohua looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His whole body started to shake. The world was spinning around him. He had just spent 5.1 million yuan on a piece of junk. Impossible, he screamed. He clutched the jade like a madman, his eyes bloodshot. He couldn't believe it. 5.1 million. He had come here on behalf of his father to learn the ropes. His father hadn't given him a cent for purchases. This was his own money. His entire life savings had just been wiped out. He pulled out his own phone and searched the image. There it was. 2 identical lions. He stared at the mismatched pair in his palm and felt the air leave his lungs. His knees buckled. He almost collapsed right there, but someone nearby caught him. The crowd looked at him with pure pity. He was the biggest sucker of the entire auction. Even the middle-aged seller stayed quiet now. If he spoke, the crowd would turn on him. He felt a little guilty, but mostly relieved. He had honestly thought it was real, but now he was 5.1 million yuan richer. Congratulations, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. I stepped forward, leaning in slightly. You spent 5 million on a 20 yuan toy. You really are rich. Xiaohua looked like he was about to vomit blood. He glared at me, teeth grinding so hard I thought they might snap. If people weren't holding him back, he would have swung at me. You, he hissed. You knew. You bid against me on purpose to trap me. He finally realized what I had done. It wasn't a bidding war, it was a pit, and he had jumped right in. Smart, I said, giving him a mock look of approval. You finally figured it out. That was the breaking point. Xiaohua went berserk. I'll kill you, he roared, lunging forward. But this wasn't the street. Li Changfeng watched him with a cold, bored expression. 2 security guards immediately stepped in and pinned Xiaohua down. Xiaohua, this isn't your house, Li Changfeng said coldly. If you cause trouble here, I'll have you thrown out. Xiaohua froze. The anger was still there, but fear took over. His father wouldn't dare cross Li Changfeng. If he got kicked out and his father found out why, he'd be dead anyway. He took a deep breath, trying to push the rage back down. His heart was bleeding. Over 5 million yuan, gone. He looked at the fake jade and wanted to smash it on the floor. Don't be impulsive, I reminded him, my voice dripping with fake concern. It cost you 5 million. Maybe you can find another sucker to buy it from you. Xiaohua's eyes were filled with pure hatred. If looks could kill, I would have been buried 10 times over. He turned his back on me, refusing to say another word. He knew if he spoke to me again, he'd have a heart attack. The room shifted. The collectors who had ignored me before were now staring with newfound respect. I was the only one who saw through the fake. They admired my eye for detail, but they were also terrified of my ruthlessness. I had intentionally driven up the price to ruin a man. They realized this wasn't just business. It was a vendetta. "You're cold, Lin Yuan," Zhang Daolin whispered to me. He hadn't expected me to be this calculating. Poor Xia Hua had been stripped down to his underwear. "He wanted to break my legs last night," I replied flatly. I wasn't the type to show mercy to enemies. Last night, if there hadn't been a crowd at the bar, I'd be in a hospital bed. This was just the beginning. I had told the thug, Guang Tu Chong, that I was taking Xia Hua's bar. I meant it. Xia Hua was currently panicking. That 5.1 million was his private stash. He had hoped to bring home a masterpiece to impress his father and get a bigger inheritance. Now he was broke. He'd be lucky if his father didn't beat him to death. Without that cash, his lifestyle was over. He owned a bar, and it made good money, but his spending was out of control. He spent more on his entourage and parties than the bar actually brought in. "I have to win it back," he muttered to himself. He couldn't let it end like this. He needed a leak, a real treasure hidden in plain sight. That was the addiction of the antique world. One lucky find could make you a billionaire. One mistake could leave you homeless. He decided he would bet everything on one more move. If he had to, he'd mortgage the bar. The exchange continued. People brought out more items, most of them genuine, but of varying value. I watched them all, my eyes ready for the next move. I used my X-ray vision to scan the items people were bringing out. Many were genuine, but they didn't interest me. The prices were too low, ranging from a few $100,000 to maybe a couple million. I was looking for something bigger. Then it was Zhang Daolin's turn. He stepped forward and pulled out the piece he had just bought from me for 2.8 million. "This is a Qing Jade double crane pendant," he announced to the room. "Its market value is 3 million yuan. It's been expert certified as authentic. Starting bid is 1 million, with increments of no less than 100,000. The collectors crowded around, passing the pendant from hand to hand. They were experienced men who had spent decades in the trade. After a thorough inspection, they began nodding. They were convinced it was the real deal. I watched Zhang Daolin with a bit of surprise. I didn't expect him to flip the piece I sold him so quickly at this specific gathering. 1 million, someone shouted as soon as the authenticity was confirmed. 1.2 million. 1.5. 2 million. The room was buzzing. Even Xia Hua looked tempted. He glanced at me, standing right next to Zhang Daolin. He clearly didn't understand why I was there, but he trusted Zhang Daolin's reputation. In this circle, Zhang was a heavyweight. Even Xia Hua's father respected him. If Zhang Daolin put it up, Xia Hua figured it had to be real. There was no way it was another fake. I could see the gears turning in Xia Hua's head. He was desperate. If he bought this pendant and took it home, maybe his father wouldn't skin him alive for his earlier mistake. He might even get a little extra spending money. He needed a win to offset the 5.1 million he had just flushed down the toilet. He figured if he held on to this jade for 2 or 3 years, the value would double, and his losses would vanish. 3 million, Xia Hua barked. He jumped straight to the market value. The room went silent. People looked at him like he was cursed. Some of them actually looked nervous. Every time this kid opened his mouth, something went wrong. They remembered the 5.1 million yuan fake he just bought and started second-guessing themselves. Was the pendant a trap too? A few bidders immediately backed off. Old Zhang, one of Zhang Daolin's friends, whispered, "This isn't another fake, is it?" Zhang Daolin slapped his chest confidently. "This is 100% genuine. If it's a fake, I'll give you a full refund personally." That changed everything. With a money-back guarantee from a man like Zhang, the fear evaporated. The bidding war reignited instantly. The price blew past 3 million and kept climbing until it hit a staggering 4 million yuan. Xia Hua looked like he wanted to scream. He had planned to snag it for 3 million, thinking no one would challenge the market price. But Zhang's guarantee had made everyone bold. When it hit 4 million, the room finally cooled down. Xia Hua grit his teeth and made his move. 4.1 million. The room fell dead silent. People traded weird looks. "Forget it," one man said, shaking his head and sitting down. "I'm not competing with this sucker. Nothing good happens when he's involved." 4.1 million was already well above the actual value. There was no profit left in it. Most of the older collectors decided to let it go. They didn't want to be accused of bullying a junior, especially since Xia Hua had already been fleeced once tonight. If his father found out they pushed the price up on his son, there would be hell to pay. For 0.1 million, going once. Zhang Daolin glanced at Xia Hua with a complicated expression. No one else raised a hand. Sold. The Qing Jade double crane pendant officially belonged to Xia Hua for a record-breaking price. He walked over, looking energized, but when it came time to settle the bill, his face turned bright red. Uncle Zhang, he muttered, looking embarrassed. I'm out of cash. Can I use my bar as collateral? A bar? Zhang Daolin scoffed, his eyebrows twitching. What am I supposed to do with a bar? I'm too old for disco lights and loud music. In this business, cash was king. While collateral was sometimes accepted, Zhang had zero interest in running a nightlife spot. If he were 20 years younger, maybe, but not now. Uncle Zhang, I'm serious. The money is gone, Xia Hua pleaded. The bar is worth at least 4 or 5 million. It's a fair trade. Please. He looked pathetic. He had spent all his liquid cash on a piece of junk, and the bar was the only asset he had left. He had mostly kept it as a place to party and pick up girls, but now he had to sacrifice it to save his skin with his father. He figured he could always buy it back later or open a new one once he was back in his dad's good graces. Just take it as collateral, Xia Hua begged. When I have the money, I'll buy it back from you. Zhang Daolin hesitated. He had a deal for 4.1 million on the table, but the buyer was broke. Right then, I leaned in and lightly poked Zhang Daolin's back. He turned to look at me, confused. Agree to it, I whispered. Zhang Daolin didn't understand why I wanted him to take a bar, but he trusted my instincts now. He turned back to Xia Hua and nodded. Xia Hua was overjoyed. He called over the security staff to bring a standard contract. These events always had them ready for high-stakes trades involving property or assets. Xia Hua scribbled out the details, putting his bar up to cover the cost of the jade. Once the signatures were dry, Zhang Daolin handed over the pendant. Xia Hua clutched it like a lifeline and scurried off. Just like that, his bar belonged to Zhang Daolin. Zhang turned to me, a knowing look in his eyes. Lin Yuan, do you want this bar? I signaled Zhang Daolin to agree to Xia Hua's terms. I had a specific reason for this. I wanted that bar. Uncle Zhang, I said, leaning in close. Let's do this. Give me the bar. Remember that white jade dragon seal we bought for 10 million? You put up 1 million of that. If we split the profit, that's 4.5 million each. I'll forfeit my entire share. Just give me the bar instead. Zhang Daolin looked at me, his expression serious. That doesn't sit right with me. The bar was only put up as collateral for 4.1 million. I'd still owe you 400,000 yuan. Uncle Zhang, we have a long future ahead of us, I replied with a smile. Let's just leave it at that. He finally gave in. We drafted a new contract right there, and just like that, the ownership of the bar transferred to me. I was now the boss. Poor Xia Hua had no idea that Zhang Daolin had already handed his precious asset over to me. If he ever planned on buying it back, he was in for a rude awakening. I watched his retreating back and smirked. Only yesterday, I had told Guang Tuqiang that I was going to take Xia Hua's bar. It had only taken 24 hours to make it my own. The auction continued, but the quality of the items dropped significantly. Through my X-ray vision, I saw nothing but fakes and cheap junk. Every time Zhang Daolin looked at me for advice, I gave him a subtle shake of my head. He listened without question. We had already hit the jackpot with the tiger tally, which was worth a staggering 100 million yuan. We were more than satisfied. Lin Yuan, there's nothing left here worth our time, Zhang Daolin whispered. How about this? Tomorrow, we'll head to the museum. I want to compare our tiger tally with the one they have on display. Sounds like a plan, I agreed. I knew for a fact that ours was the real deal. If they were identical, it meant the museum's crown jewel was likely a fake. If we could prove ours was the original, its value would be astronomical. As the event wrapped up, the crowd dispersed. Zhang Daolin insisted on driving me home in his Maybach. He pulled up to the Ziwei apartments and looked at me. I'll pick you up tomorrow at noon, Lin Yuan. We'll go to the museum together. I nodded, said my goodbyes, and headed up to my rental. As I reached the door and pulled out my keys, I instinctively activated my X-ray vision. What I saw through the wooden panel nearly gave me a nosebleed. Did these girls have no respect for the fact that a man lived here? The first thing that caught my eye was a pair of incredibly long, pale legs. Yao Yao was sprawled out on the living room sofa. seemingly fast asleep. My heart skipped a beat. She was wearing nothing but a tiny pair of white underwear and a thin black tank top. Her long hair was messy, draped over the cushions. I cleared my throat loudly, trying to give her a fair warning. I didn't want to make things awkward. I counted to 3 and pushed the door open, making as much noise as possible. It didn't matter. She was out cold. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. I couldn't help but stare at those legs. Yao Yao was tall, about 5'7", and she knew how to use her height. I wiped the corner of my mouth and coughed again, louder this time. She groaned softly, shifting on the cushions. That sound made my skin tingle. She squinted, her eyes slowly focusing on me. Lin Yuan, when did you get back? Suddenly, her eyes went wide. She realized her situation and scrambled to grab a throw pillow, clutching it over her lap. Her face turned bright red, a rare sight for someone as bold as her. Why are you sleeping on the couch like this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. You know I live here, right? I took a shower and was just so tired, she muttered, rubbing her temples. She was still hugging the pillow, but the way she looked right now was even more distracting than before. I must have drifted off. Find a job yet? I asked. She had been fired by Xie Hua the night before without a cent of her pay. Not yet, she sighed. I think I'm just going to lie flat for a couple of days. I'll look once I've had some rest. Don't bother looking, I said with a grin. You're going back to work at that bar. No way. She shook her head violently. I am never stepping foot in Xie Hua's place again. That man is a predator. I'm not walking back into the lion's den. What are you afraid of? I laughed. The bar belongs to me now. She froze. What did you just say? I said, Xie Hua doesn't own it anymore. I do. I pulled the contract out of my bag and tossed it to her. Yao Yao snatched the paper and read through it twice, her jaw dropping lower with every line. She looked at me like I had grown a second head. How? It's only been one night. How is this even possible? The details aren't important, I said. The point is, I own the place, and I need someone I can trust to run it. You know the layout, you know the staff, and you know the business. You're the perfect fit. You want me to manage it? She was stunned. Even for a girl as loud and confident as her, this was a lot to process. Yesterday, she was unemployed. Today, she was being offered a manager's position. Exactly. You'll be the general manager. You'll have the power to hire and fire anyone you want. Yao Yao sat there, paralyzed. The pillow slipped from her lap and hit the floor, exposing her legs again, but she didn't even notice. She just stared at me. Lin Yuan, be honest with me, she whispered, her eyes turning watery and wide. Are you actually some secret billionaire's son? Tell me now. I'm ready to stop working hard and just let you take care of me. I felt a surge of heat in my chest. I knew she was mostly joking. She loved making suggestive comments, but she was making it very hard to stay professional. You know exactly who I am, I said, shaking my head. Now get some clothes on. We're going to go take over that bar. She hurried to her room and changed. A few minutes later, she walked out wearing tight jeans that accentuated every curve of those long legs and a crisp white shirt. It was a look that could kill. Why did she have to dress so sexy? It felt like she was trying to murder me with her looks. I felt a silent groan escape my soul. We had shared an apartment for a long time, but this was the first time I had ever seen Yao Yao in tight jeans. What's wrong? Isn't your sister always this sexy? She walked right up to me, a playful smirk on her face. Don't tell me you can't handle it already. She did a slow, confident pirouette, showing off every curve of her figure. I didn't answer. I just called a taxi, and we headed straight for Hohai Street. We found Xie Hua's bar quickly. From the outside, it looked like business as usual. The waiters and the floor manager were going about their routines, completely unaware that the ownership had shifted overnight. As we reached the entrance, 2 security guards stepped forward. They blocked our path. They both recognized Yao Yao immediately. She had been the resident DJ here for a long time. Everyone knew her face. Their expressions shifted instantly. One of them turned on his heel and sprinted inside to raise the alarm. Xie Hua had given them strict orders. If Yao Yao ever showed her face again, they were to notify him and detain her by any means necessary. The guard ran straight to Guang Tu Chong, the bar manager. He was a bald, tough-looking guy who followed Xie Hua's every word. The moment he got the news, Guang Tu Chong slammed his drink down and marched toward the door. He wasn't going to let Yao Yao escape a second time. The guards at the door let us inside, but they lingered behind us, closing off the exit. They were trapping us like rats in a hole. Lin Yuan, are you absolutely sure this place is yours? Yao Yao's face was pale. I feel like we just walked into a wolf's den. If I hadn't shown her the signed contract earlier, she probably would have bolted for the street. Well, I didn't know where to find you too, and here you are, walking right into my hands. Guang Tu Chong sneered as he approached. He had several guards flanking him. As the manager, he held total authority over the staff. He intended to seize us and hand us over to Xiahua. Take them. The bar wasn't officially open yet, so there were no customers around to witness what was about to happen. It was the perfect opportunity. I knew exactly what they were thinking. They'd grab us, then wipe the security footage later. No evidence, no problem. The guards lunged forward. Yao Yao instinctively ducked behind me, her breath hitching. I remained calm. I didn't move an inch. Instead, I pulled the contract from my pocket and held it up. Did Xiahua forget to tell you? I asked, my voice steady. This bar doesn't belong to him anymore. As of now, I'm the owner. And that means I have the power to fire every single one of you. Guang Tu Chong froze. His heart seemed to skip a beat. He snatched the contract from my hand and scanned the lines, his face turning a sickly shade of white. The legal reality hit him like a freight train. Xiahua was out. I was in. Boss, he shouted suddenly. Then, to my absolute shock, he raised his hand and slapped himself across the face. Hard. I am so sorry. Please forgive my behavior yesterday and just now. He handed the contract back with both hands, bowing deeply. Then, he started slapping himself again, left and right, over and over. Yao Yao and I just stared, completely stunned. His subordinates were just as confused, watching their boss go into a self-inflicted frenzy. What are you idiots standing there for? Guang Tu Chong roared at his men. He stopped hitting himself long enough to slap the nearest guard to wake him up. This is our new boss. From now on, you call him Brother Yuan. The guards panicked. They all bowed their heads low toward me and Yao Yao, and a chorus of slaps echoed through the bar as they followed their leader's lead. Okay. That's enough, I said, feeling a bit overwhelmed by the theatrics. Yao Yao let out a long, shaky breath. A look of pure triumph replaced her fear. I hadn't lied to her. I really was the owner. She puffed out her chest, looking incredibly proud. She was the manager now, and she knew it. Boss, please don't fire me, Guang Tu Chong pleaded. He looked genuinely terrified. Men like him didn't have many options for honest work outside of the nightlife scene. He had been here for years. It was his life. I was just doing my job before. I'll do anything you say now. I looked at him. I actually respected the move. He was a man who knew when to bend. He saw the shift in power and pivoted instantly. That kind of survival instinct was a talent, as long as I could keep him under my thumb. I have a family to feed, boss, he continued, desperate to prove his loyalty. You tell me to go east, I won't go west. I'll be your most loyal dog. His men chimed in immediately, echoing his sentiments. None of them wanted to lose a good-paying gig. Fine, I said. I'll keep you all on for now. But there's a 1-month probation period. If you step out of line once, you're gone. During this month, you take orders from Yao Yao. She is the general manager. I took a breath and looked around the room. Also, the name is changing. From today, this place is called Yunfei Bar. I started barking out orders. I told Guang Tu Chong to head to the Industrial and Commercial Bureau to handle the name change paperwork. He practically tripped over himself to promise he'd get it done perfectly. Yao Yao was the boss now, and Guang Tu Chong was demoted to head of security. Listen well, I told the group. When I'm not here, Yao Yao's word is law. If anyone gives her trouble, you'll answer to me. I didn't know much about running a bar, but with Yao Yao's experience and Guang Tu Chong's muscle, I knew the transition would be smooth. I sat down and began reviewing the ledgers. As I flipped through the books, I noticed Guang Tu Chong's eyes flickering nervously. He kept glancing at the pages and then away. My gut tightened. I knew that look. As the former manager, he'd had total control. The books were cooked. He'd been skimming off the top, and now that I was the owner, his little secret was sitting right in front of me. I closed the ledgers and looked straight at Guang Tu Chong. I wasn't going to dig into the past. Whatever he stole from the previous owner didn't matter to me. But the future was different. I'll pretend I didn't see what happened before today, I said, my voice turning cold. But from now on, if anyone reaches into the cookie jar, I'll chop their hand off. Guang Tu-chang wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. He looked visibly relieved. He knew if I did a real audit, he'd be in deep trouble. I didn't care about Xiehua's old money. I just wanted the bar to run clean under my watch. Soon, Yunfei Bar opened its doors. A long line had already formed outside. When the regulars walked in and saw Yao Yao standing there, the room erupted. Word had spread about her being fired the night before, and her fans were devastated. Seeing her back as the boss sent them into a frenzy. "Goddess, you're still here," one guy screamed dramatically. "I knew you wouldn't abandon us." I stayed at the bar for 2 hours, watching the flow of business. I decided to leave Guang Tu-chang in charge for the night as a test. I wanted to see if he had the guts to mess with the books while I wasn't looking. When Yao Yao and I finally headed back to our shared apartment, Bai Xiaoling was already home. I stood in the living room and felt a surge of curiosity. I activated my X-ray vision and glanced toward Xiaoling's room. She was fast asleep, but her tangled position on the bed made my blood pressure spike. Ba, forgive me," I muttered, quickly shutting off my power before my nose started bleeding. Yao Yao gave me a weird look. "Since when are you religious?" "I've always been a believer," I joked, trying to play it cool. "The Buddha lives in my heart, even if wine and meat pass through my gut." Yao Yao rolled her eyes and headed for the bathroom. "I'm showering first. You wait your turn." As soon as the door clicked shut, my self-control crumbled. I flicked my vision back on. I caught a glimpse of her back as she started to undress. I watched for a few minutes, my heart racing, before I forced myself to stop. I sat on the sofa, rubbing my chin. I was rich now, but tomorrow was the big day. I was meeting Zhang Daolin to authenticate the Du Hu Fu tiger tally at the museum. I knew it was real. And if it was real, it was worth 100 million yuan. My half would be 50 million. With that kind of money, I could buy a massive house right here in the capital. I had planned on moving anyway after that creep followed Xiaoling home, but now I had a better idea. Why rent? I'd buy a place and let Yao Yao and Xiaoling live there with me. Living alone is lonely. Having 2 beautiful roommates to keep me company was much better for my soul and my eyes. Half an hour later, Yao Yao walked out. She was wrapped in nothing but a thin white towel. She walked past me like I wasn't even there. My X-ray vision was still off, but I didn't need it to know she wasn't wearing anything underneath that towel. The view was incredible. "What are you staring at?" she snapped, wrinkling her nose. "Go shower. You smell like a bar." The next morning at 9, Zhang Daolin called. He was downstairs. I got ready and headed out. The museum was only 20 kilometers away, but this was the capital. Traffic turned a 40-minute drive into a 2-hour crawl. Luckily, neither of us had a 9 to 5 to worry about. When we arrived at the Imperial Museum, the director came out to meet us personally. He and Zhang Daolin were old friends in the antique world. "Director Wang, this is Lin Yuan," Zhang Daolin said, introducing me as a fellow collector. We headed to the director's office. Zhang Daolin didn't waste time. He pulled out the tiger tally. Director Wang's eyes locked onto it instantly. He spent 10 minutes examining it with a magnifying glass, his expression growing more confused by the second. "This is genuine," Wang whispered. But there was a problem. The museum already had the real Du Hu Fu. It was one of their most prized treasures. He picked up the phone and called for their in-house expert, a man named Zhao Gongming. Zhao arrived a moment later, carrying the museum's version of the tally. He looked more like a mob boss than a scholar, with slicked back hair and a sharp black suit. "Director Wang, please verify yours first," Zhang Daolin suggested. "Make sure it hasn't been swapped." "We've already checked," Zhao Gongming said sternly. "Ours is the original. It hasn't left the vault." He took our tally and set it next to the museum's. He pulled out his testing equipment and began a deep analysis. Slowly, the color drained from his face. This can't be," Zhao muttered. His instruments didn't lie. According to every test, our tally was also an authentic piece from the Qin dynasty. He looked back and forth between the 2 objects, appearing to have a total existential crisis. "They're both real," he gasped, his voice trembling. "But that's impossible. How can there be 2 originals?" Several sets of eyes stared at the two tiger tallies lying on the table. They were identical. There was no visible difference between them at all. Both appeared to be genuine artifacts from the preaching period. It didn't make sense. These tallies were used to command entire armies. How could there be two of them? I kept my X-ray vision active, scanning both objects intensely. My power confirmed it. Both were real. I was stunned. I felt like there was more information hidden within my vision that I just wasn't seeing yet. I picked up one of the tallies to examine it closer. As I held it, I felt a strange current of air flow from the bottom of the tally into my palm. I focused my eyes and saw a faint, white transparent gas swirling into my hand and traveling up my arm. The white gas settled in my lower abdomen, right at my dantian. Suddenly, a warm sensation spread through my gut. I felt refreshed, more alert, and full of energy. I watched the gas inside me. It hovered there like a tiny, glowing cloud. Was this the legendary spiritual chi I'd read about? I realized the tiger tally actually contained ancient energy. I set the first one down and picked up the second one, mentally focusing on absorbing more. A second later, another stream of white gas surged into my body. It merged with the first cloud, growing larger. My whole body felt warm now, and I could feel my physical strength increasing. As Zhang Daolin and the others frantically flipped through reference books to solve the mystery, I looked at the tallies again. This time, the spiritual chi flowed into my eyes. New information flickered into my mind like a digital display. Preaching tiger tallies. The internal voice of my power whispered, divided into left and right halves. One held by the king of Qin, the other by the great general. Both are required to mobilize the military. I know what these are, I said, breaking the silence. I explained the history of the left and right tallies to the group. They were blown away. The mystery was solved. These weren't duplicates, they were a matching pair. Together, they were worth at least 100 million yuan. Director Wang turned to Zhang Daolin, his eyes gleaming. Brother Zhang, these two belong together. Would you consider selling yours to the museum? Our tiger tally is already a national treasure, but having the complete pair would make it the crown jewel of the Imperial Museum. Of course, Zhang Daolin agreed without a second thought. He knew that while it was worth a fortune, an item like this belonged in a museum for everyone to see, not hidden in a private collection. The museum agreed to buy our half for 50 million yuan. Director Wang pulled out a checkbook and wrote a check for the full amount right there. We'll split this 50-50, Zhang Daolin told me. I'll transfer 25 million to you. But first, you need to get a black gold card at the bank. I followed Zhang Daolin to a nearby bank. Standard bank accounts have strict limits on daily transfers, usually capping out at a few $100,000. To handle tens of millions, you need a high-level membership. Most people never even see these cards because they don't have the money to qualify. With a black gold card, you won't have limits anymore, Zhang Daolin explained as we walked in. You can move money whenever you want. While Zhang Daolin went to handle the check processing, I sat in the waiting area. That's when I saw a familiar figure. My heart skipped a beat. I never expected to see her here. A slim woman across the lobby spotted me and froze in surprise. The tall man next to her followed her gaze. Shaoli, do you know him? The man asked. He's my ex-boyfriend, Wang Li said, her voice cold and dismissive. Let's go say hello, the man said, a smirk playing on his lips. He grabbed Wang Li's hand and led her over to me. Lin Yuan, what are you doing here? Wang Li looked me up and down with pure contempt. Just getting a bank card, I said. I looked at her, then at the man beside her, Li Yunfei. It looked like she had finally found the rich guy she always wanted. Is this the pathetic ex you told me about? Li Yunfei asked loudly. The one who couldn't even afford a movie ticket? That's him, Wang Li sneered. When I was with him, he never had more than 4 digits in his bank account. He was so poor he'd count every penny just to buy a snack. She had dumped me because I was broke. She wanted a high society life, and now she thought she had it. She looked at me like I was a bug she'd stepped on. It's a good thing you left him, Li Yunfei said, puffing out his chest. He adjusted his belt, making sure his BMW keys were visible. Otherwise, you'd still be eating instant noodles in some basement. You're right, Wang Li laughed. I'd rather cry in a BMW than eat noodles with him. He has no ambition, just a total loser. I sat there calmly as they took turns insulting me. In the past, I would have been furious. I would have tried to defend myself. But now, I felt nothing. We lived in two completely different worlds now. Lin Yuan, are you still delivering food? Wang Li asked mockingly. If you're desperate for a real job, maybe Brother Fei can help. He could find you a spot at his company. 5,000 yuan a month is way better than what you make on a bike. Yeah, Li Yunfei added, grinning. You can come fetch tea and water for me. I'll give you 5,000 a month and even cover your room and board. You won't have to starve anymore. He leaned in, wrapping his arm around Wang Li's waist, waiting for me to explode. But I just looked at them like they were performers in a cheap play. My silence clearly annoyed them. You're still the same, Wang Li snapped. Poor, lazy, and useless. Anyone who stays with you is cursed. You'll never amount to anything. I frowned. I had been having a great day until they showed up. I had almost forgotten about her. Back when we were together, I had saved every cent, eating nothing but noodles for months just so I could take her on the trip she wanted. Now, she was standing here calling me a parasite. She had no idea who she was talking to. Back then, I really loved Wang Li. I used to dream about marrying her. I spent every cent of my savings from years of work just to take her to fancy dinners and the latest movies. I lived on instant noodles so she could have the life she wanted. But Wang Li wasn't looking for a partner. She was looking for a fountain of wealth. The moment my bank account hit zero, she didn't support me. She threw me away like trash. She told me to my face that she'd rather cry in a luxury car than smile on the back of my bicycle. She mocked me for not having 100,000 yuan in savings after years of work. She demanded a 500,000 yuan dowry and a house in the city center as a prerequisite for marriage. Then, she walked away to find her rich guy, leaving me broken. It took me 3 agonizing months just to feel human again. Looking back at that pain, I still felt a chill in my heart. Now, she had achieved her dream. She was clinging to this successful man, looking down at me from what she thought was the top of the world. What I do now has nothing to do with you, I said calmly. Please don't bother me. What? Wang Li shrieked. You dare speak to me like that? Do you have any idea what my life is like now? It's a life you'll never touch. Fei gives me 20,000 yuan a month just for pocket money. You'll never see a salary that high in your entire life. She snuggled closer to Li Yunfei, playing the part of the pampered wife. And we're getting engaged soon. Fei isn't from the capital, but through his hard work, he's already saved enough for a down payment here. Soon, we'll have our own home. And you? You're still huddled in a rented room like a rat. Aren't you ashamed? How do you even show your face in public? She tore me down to build him up, and Li Yunfei soaked it in. He looked at me like I was a toad who had once accidentally tasted swan meat, but now the swan was back where it belonged, with a winner like him. Brother, when we get married, I'll make sure to send you an invitation, Li Yunfei said with a smug grin. You really should come. Fei, why bother? Wang Li sneered. We won't have anything to do with people like him. He'll never amount to anything. Let's just ignore the trash. Just then, Zhang Daolin walked over. A middle-aged man followed closely behind him, looking incredibly respectful. Zhang Daolin pointed at me and turned to the man. President Zhang, this is my friend, Lin Yuan, Zhang Daolin said. He's the one who needs to open an account. Zhang Daolin had already cashed the 100 million yuan check. Now, he was just waiting for me to get a black gold card so he could transfer my 50 million yuan share to me immediately. Mr. Lin, I am the manager of this branch, the official said, bowing slightly. If you have your ID, please follow me to my office to handle the paperwork. A black gold card? Li Yunfei's eyes nearly popped out of his head. He froze, staring at me in total shock. You don't just walk in and ask for a black gold card. You need a massive cash flow, at least tens of millions, to even be considered. Even Li Yunfei wasn't qualified for one. He looked down at Wang Li, his voice trembling. Shaoli, are you sure he's a loser? Wang Li had told him I was a delivery driver who lived on ramen. But bank presidents don't personally escort delivery drivers to private offices. This wasn't a joke. I don't know, Wang Li stammered. She was completely lost. In her mind, I was still the broke guy in the shared apartment. She couldn't process this reversal. It had only been a year. How did I become a VIP who required a personal reception from the branch manager? A thought suddenly struck her. Was I a secret rich kid all along? Had I been hiding my status while we were together? Lin Yuan, are you actually from a wealthy family? Her attitude flipped 180 degrees. She forced a sweet, submissive smile and let go of Li Yunfei's arm, reaching out to grab mine. Sorry, I'm just a loser, remember? I said coldly, stepping back to avoid her touch. I walked toward the office with Zhang Daolin and the manager. Wang Li and Li Yunfei followed behind like lost dogs, desperate to see if this was real. But as we reached the door, the manager stopped and turned around. This is a private area. Unauthorized personnel must stay back, he said firmly. Security guards stepped in, ushering the two of them back toward the lobby. They stood there, faces pale and humiliated. Shaoli, you said he was a poor ghost. Li Yunfei hissed, his voice full of disbelief. The manager is personally handling a black gold card for him. That's impossible for a broke guy. When I was with him, he really was poor. Wang Li cried, her mind racing. He wouldn't even buy movie tickets without complaining. I don't understand how this happened. She looked at Li Yunfei, and for the first time, her gaze shifted. She was a woman who worshipped money above all else. She had stayed with Li Yunfei because his startup made 40 or 50,000 a month, good money, but nothing compared to the level of a black gold card. If I was actually rich, then in her eyes, I was the bigger prize. Wang Li had planned to marry Li Yunfei and have his children. But everything changed the moment she saw that black gold card. To get one of those, you needed at least 10 million yuan in assets. That meant I had tens of millions in cash sitting in my account, way more than Li Yunfei. In a city like this, 10 million could buy a decent apartment outright. Li Yunfei's startup made good money, but he could only afford a down payment. He'd be a mortgage slave for 30 years. If I bought a house in full, it would belong to me completely. I could see the gears turning in Wang Li's head. She probably thought I still had feelings for her. After all, when she dumped me, I had literally begged her to stay with tears in my eyes. In her twisted mind, she was my true love, and she figured there was a 70% chance I'd take her back if she just smiled. Suddenly, Li Yunfei didn't look so attractive to her anymore. Why struggle for 30 years with him when I could buy a house today, put her name on the deed, and give her half the property, even if we divorced? Shaoli, let's go, Li Yunfei said, trying to pull her away. She didn't move. She sat down on a nearby chair instead. Brother Fei, you go ahead. I want to wait here for a bit. Wait for what? For Lin Yuan. Li Yunfei's face reddened with anger. You've already broken up with him. What are you doing? Just go home first, she said, her voice dripping with impatience. I'll be back later. Li Yunfei wasn't an idiot. He saw the look on her face and knew exactly what she was thinking. He knew she was a gold digger, but seeing her jump ship the second a bigger shark swam by was a direct hit to his ego. Wang Li, what is wrong with you? He hissed, his face darkening. She looked up at him, perfectly calm. Li Yunfei, we're both adults. Let's just break up. Break up? He shivered, caught off guard by how cold she was. 1 second they were mocking me together, and the next, she was cutting him loose. I've thought about it, she continued, her voice steady. I realized I still can't forget Lin Yuan. He's the man I truly love. I hope you understand. You might have had my body, but you never had my heart. There's no point in staying together, right? It was a total circus. Li Yunfei looked like the biggest clown in the room. You think I don't know what you're doing? He roared, his voice trembling with rage. You don't love him. You just saw he has more money than me. You're just a cheap girl who follows the highest bidder. You're disgusting. He looked like he wanted to strangle her right there, but the bank security guards were already closing in, watching his every move. He had no choice. He spat on the ground, turned on his heel, and stormed out. He had actually considered marrying her because she seemed sweet, but now he saw her for exactly what she was. A few minutes later, the office doors opened. I walked out with Zhang Daolin and the bank manager, laughing and chatting. I felt great. The card was in my pocket, and Zhang Daolin had already transferred the 50 million yuan to my account. I was officially a wealthy man. Then, I heard that familiar, high-pitched voice. Lin Yuan. Wang Li ran toward me, wearing a soft, tender expression. She reached out to grab my arm, but I swiped her hand away instantly. Miss, please show some respect, I said. Lin Yuan, let's get back together, she pleaded, her voice turning syrupy sweet. I broke up with Li Yunfei. I realized you're the only man I truly love. I felt a wave of nausea. My skin actually crawled. She was pretty on the outside, but her soul was absolutely filthy. Lin Yuan, who is this? Zhang Daolin asked, looking confused. I'm his girlfriend, Wang Li interrupted quickly. We just had a little argument, that's all. Ex-girlfriend, I corrected her coldly. The bank manager and Zhang Daolin exchanged a look. They were smart men. They knew exactly what was happening. Lin Yuan, I know I was wrong, she said, putting on her best damsel in distress face. Back in the day, whenever she looked at me like that, I'd cave immediately. But I wasn't that pathetic loser anymore. A good horse doesn't turn back for old grass, I told her. Just leave. I don't want to see you. How can you be so heartless? She cried, grabbing my hand again. Think of everything we went through. You said you wanted to marry me. I looked her dead in the eye. Is that why you came back? Because you think I have money now? Of course not, she gasped. Am I that kind of woman? Whether you're poor or rich, I've decided to stay with you forever. I want to have your children and be a good wife. Zhang Daolin looked like he was about to gag. I decided to have a little fun. Well, I hate to disappoint you, I said with a sigh. But I'm actually still broke. I'm still just a delivery guy. She froze. What? This black gold card. I gestured to the card. My boss just made me the legal representative of his company. It's a company card. This man right here is my boss. I pointed at Zhang Daolin. Zhang Daolin didn't miss a beat. He caught on instantly and nodded. That's right. Lin Yuan is my employee. I let him be the legal rep, so he doesn't have to deliver food anymore. I pay him 5,000 yuan a month plus benefits. Wang Li's grip on my arm loosened immediately. Her face went pale. She knew what a legal representative was. It sounded fancy, but it mostly meant you were the fall guy. If the company got sued or broke the law, the legal rep was the one who went to jail, not the real owner. In an instant, the love in her eyes vanished, replaced by pure, cold calculation. A company's profit has nothing to do with the legal representative. If you have a good boss, maybe you'll get a few shares, but Zhang Daolin had already laid it out. 5,000 yuan a month plus basic benefits. That's right, I said, looking at Wang Li with a straight face. My boss is letting me be the legal rep. 5,000 a month, and they cover my insurance. It's a stable gig. I couldn't let an opportunity like this pass me by. I checked my watch. Anyway, I've got work to do. I'm heading out. The moment Wang Li heard the details, the gears in her head stopped turning. She realized I didn't actually have money. Deep down, she never believed I could be rich anyway. We had been together for 6 months, and all she ever saw me eat was instant noodles. How could a guy like that suddenly strike it rich? She didn't even try to argue. She made up a quick excuse and vanished into the crowd. The three of us stood there in silence, watching her walk away. Even men like Zhang Daolin and President Zhang, with all their years of experience, were stunned. They had never seen a woman so ruthlessly practical. 1 second she was talking about bearing my children and being a good wife. The next, she was gone without a backward glance. She didn't just love money, she was obsessed with it. Zhang Daolin and the president both shook their heads and gave me a thumbs up. They were glad I was smart enough to feed her a lie to get rid of her. A woman like that would leave you broke and broken. But that was just a small distraction. I had my black gold card now, with 50 million yuan sitting in the account. I felt incredible. After parting ways with Zhang Daolin, I headed back to my rental. 50 million. I needed a plan. In a city like this, that kind of money could buy a top-tier apartment and a luxury car. As long as I didn't go crazy buying ancient villas or traditional courtyards, I was set for life. It felt like I had won the lottery. I flopped onto the sofa, staring at the ceiling in a daze. Just a few days ago, I was delivering food and running a street stall. Now, I had X-ray vision and a fortune, and this was only the beginning. With my eyes, I could appraise antiques or gamble on raw jade. The money would only keep coming. First, I'd buy a house, then a car, and then I'd bring my parents here to live with me. That reminded me, I didn't know if my father's surgery was finished yet. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. Xiao Yuan. Her voice came through, sounding tired. Mom, is Dad's surgery done? Is he okay? Not yet, she said, her voice trembling slightly. The doctor said his bones are badly broken. He needs to recover a bit more before they can even operate. My heart sank. Mom, it was just a fall. How did it get this bad? Why are they talking about his condition like it's life-threatening? I knew he had fallen and needed 150,000 for the surgery. I had already sent 200,000 back. I didn't realize it was serious enough to involve long delays. The head doctor said, "The money we sent isn't enough," she whispered. He told us to prepare another 300,000. My blood boiled. My mother hadn't wanted to tell me. She knew how hard I worked in the city just to scrape together that first 200,000. She and my father had even discussed that if we couldn't find the money, they would just let the doctors amputate his leg rather than burden me further. Not enough? It's a broken leg, not cancer. I shouted. That doctor is a thief. This is straight-up extortion. I had already given her 200,000, and now they wanted 300,000 more. That was 500,000 yuan for a fracture. Mom, listen to me. Bring Dad to the city. We'll go to a real hospital here. I can get him the best doctors. We are not letting him lose his leg. Xiao Yuan, we can't, she sighed. Your father can't move, and the crops at home need harvesting. We don't want to be a burden to you. He's my father. He worked his whole life for this family. I won't let him be disabled because of some greedy small-town doctor. I remembered the first time he dropped me off at college. We took a 20-hour train ride together. To save money, we squeezed into a tiny, 8-square-meter room with no fan in the middle of summer. My nose stung with tears. He deserved to enjoy his life now. But my mother kept refusing. She was terrified of dragging me down. We were poor farmers. They had struggled just to get me through university. I had lost girlfriends in the past because we didn't have a house or a car, and my parents blamed themselves for that. They felt like their poverty was the reason I wasn't married yet. Xiao Yuan, just work hard, she said, sounding like she was about to hang up. Eat well, sleep well. Don't worry about us. I'll take care of your father. Mom, I have money now. Listen. The line went dead. I knew she was hiding something. This was an emergency. I had to go home. In the past, I couldn't afford the trip, and I was too ashamed to show my face during the holidays. But now, I had 50 million. I opened my phone and booked the next flight out. I grabbed my things and hailed a taxi to the airport. Before, I would have walked miles just to save a few yuan for instant noodles. Now, time was more valuable than money. If I was too late, that hack doctor might actually cut off my father's leg. Bastard. I cursed under my breath in the back of the cab. 500,000 yuan for a broken leg. It was a scam, plain and simple. On the way, I called Yao Yao and Bai Xiaoling. I told them not to wait up for me and that I'd be gone for a few days. I asked Yao Yao to keep an eye on the bar and told them both to be careful. I was still worried about that creep who had been following Xiaoling. I made it to the airport just in time. 5 hours later, I landed at the provincial capital and hopped on a high-speed train to my home county, Qishui. Qishui was technically one of the poorest counties in the country, but the cost of living there was surprisingly high, sometimes even crazier than in the capital. I stepped off the train, my heart racing. I was coming for that doctor, and I was bringing my father home. Qishui was a strange place. It was technically one of the poorest counties in the country, but the cost of living was insane. In some ways, it was even more expensive than the capital. The population was huge, over 1 million people, which was more than some actual cities. Despite the crowds, the local wages were pathetic. Most people only made about 1,500 yuan a month. Yet, the prices were terrifying. A simple bowl of rice noodles cost 15 yuan. If you didn't have money, you literally couldn't survive there. I often wondered how these people managed to stay alive. Then I realized the truth. Most of the 1 million people here worked elsewhere, earned their money in the big cities, and only came back home to spend it. That influx of cash pushed prices up for everyone. If you couldn't afford it, someone else could. With no one regulating the market, the cost of living had become completely distorted. The hospitals were even worse. Poor people were terrified of them. You couldn't walk through the doors without losing hundreds or thousands of yuan. The doctors would force you through a never-ending cycle of expensive tests. By the time you finished the routine, they'd tell you nothing was wrong, but your pockets would be empty. Unless you were truly dying, you stayed away. You just couldn't afford to be sick. After 3 more hours on a high-speed train, I finally reached the county seat. I didn't head home. I went straight to the hospital. Mom, I'm here. Which room are you in? I asked over the phone. My mother, Shin Fong, sounded shocked. She thought I was joking until I told her I was standing in the first-floor lobby. She gave me the location, and I hurried toward the orthopedic ward. It was a crowded 6-bedroom. The air was thick with the smell of disinfectant and the sound of too many people packed into a small space. I found my parents in a bed near the window. When my mother saw me, she stood up, her face a mix of joy and instant guilt. She started worrying about how much the plane and train tickets had cost me. "Mom, I have money now. Don't worry," I said, grabbing her hand and gently leading her back to the seat. "I'm here to take you both back to the capital with me." I looked at the bed. My father, Lin Hai, looked pale. He opened his eyes and sighed when he saw me. "Why did you come back?" he grumbled, though I could see the relief in his eyes. "It's not a big deal. You shouldn't have wasted the money." He was blaming himself. He knew that his broken leg was the reason I was going through all this trouble. He knew about the 200,000 yuan I had sent, and he was terrified. "Xiao Fan, tell me the truth," he said, his voice trembling. "Did you take out a loan?" A father knows his son. He knew I didn't have that kind of cash lying around. The thought of me being in debt made his heart ache. "Dad, you know me too well," I admitted, gripping his hand. "I did think about it. I almost did. I didn't tell him that on my way to get that loan, I was hit by a car. I didn't tell him that the accident, caused by a woman named Jean Bai Yao, was the reason I now had X-ray vision. In a strange way, I had her to thank for everything." "Oh, Xiao Fan, it's all my fault." My mother started sobbing. "We've become a burden. No girl will ever want you now that you're buried in debt. Even a girl from the village wouldn't marry a man with those kinds of loans." "I'm not doing the surgery," my father said suddenly, his voice firm. "Check the hospital account and see how much we can get back. We'll pay off the loan. If they have to amputate, then let them. As long as I don't die, it's fine." He was dead serious. He wasn't going to let me ruin my youth for his leg. He knew how predatory those loans could be, with interest rates that would swallow me whole. "Mom, Dad, listen to me," I said, pulling out my phone. "I didn't take out any loans. I really have the money. Just look." I opened my banking app and showed them the screen. Their eyes nearly popped out of their heads when they saw the string of zeros. "So much money," my father gasped. "Xiao Fan, did you rob a bank?" "I'm telling you, you can't do anything illegal. Don't bring trouble to the family." "Relax," I laughed. "It's all legal. I've been investing in antiques." "Antiques? Like old relics?" they asked, confused. I explained it to them as simply as I could. I told them how I bought an old silver piece for 800 yuan and sold it for nearly 3 million. They stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. They couldn't wrap their heads around the idea that someone could make a lifetime's worth of wages just by picking up a piece of trash from a roadside stall. "Is it really that easy?" they asked skeptically. "In the antique world, they say if you make one big sale, you can live off it for 3 years, I told them. "I just got lucky. And now that I have the money, I want you to move to the capital. I'll buy a house for us." My father's eyes lit up. "If it's that easy, maybe I should try it too." My mother immediately pinched his arm. "Xiao Fan got lucky. You'd just be throwing money away. Besides, we shouldn't be a burden. We'll stay in the countryside. We don't want to cause trouble for him in the big city." My father winced and nodded. Right. You're right. I'm just used to living in the countryside," my father said with a weak smile. "If I went to the big city, I probably wouldn't know what to do with myself." Right then, the door swung open. A middle-aged man in a white lab coat marched in, heading straight for my father's bed. "Lin Hai's family," the man barked. My mother, Shen Fong, scrambled up from her chair. She looked at him with pure reverence and hurried over. "Doctor, I'm his wife. We're the family." The doctor, Zhao Haifeng, gave her a cold, sweeping glance. I caught a flash of genuine disdain in his eyes. He didn't care about the people. He only cared about the profit. "Did you get the 300,000 yuan ready?" he asked flatly. "If the money is there, we can do the surgery. If it's not ready by tomorrow, we'll just have to amputate." He said it like he was reading a grocery list. He stared at my mother, waiting for an answer while she withered under his gaze. "Doctor, we don't have it ready yet," she whispered. "Then prepare for amputation," Zhao Haifeng said. He turned on his heel to leave. "Wait a second," I called out. He stopped and looked at me, annoyed. "Who are you?" "I'm Lin Hai's son," I said, my voice turning cold. "I want to know what kind of surgery costs 300,000 yuan. Zhao Haifeng's temper flared instantly. "Am I the doctor, or are you?" I said it's 300,000, so it's 300,000. If you don't have it, get ready for the saw. You black-hearted crook. I snapped, my blood boiling. We already paid 200,000. Now you want 300,000 more. I'm going to expose you for this. Go ahead, he sneered. Expose whatever you want. This is a hospital. Nobody treats you for free. That 200,000 you paid? That barely covers the cost of the amputation. If you want any other surgery, you pay up. That's the rule. He let out a sharp, mocking laugh. He looked at us like we were trash beneath his boots. 200,000 just for an amputation? I felt like I was going to vomit from pure rage. Was I out of touch with the world, or were hospitals really this predatory? I lived in the capital, and even there, I didn't think prices were this insane. This was a tiny county hospital. Was there no law here? Cut the crap, Zhao Haifeng muttered. What do you expect for 200,000? Medical equipment is expensive. Doctors and nurses need salaries. You think this is a charity ward? He slammed the door as he left. Xiao Fan, don't fight with the doctor. My father sighed, looking defeated. If they have to cut it off, let them. Dad, we aren't staying here, I said firmly. I'm taking you to the capital. I'll get you into the best hospital there. I had the money now. I wasn't going to let my father suffer in this hellhole for another minute. But Xiao Fan, I can't even move my leg, my father said with a bitter laugh. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled back the covers and activated my X-ray vision. I looked straight through his skin. The bone in his left thigh was shattered. It had pierced the skin before, and now it was just crudely tucked back into the muscle. They hadn't even installed a steel plate to hold it together. I reached out and touched his leg. Suddenly, I felt the chi in my dantian surge. A thin wisp of energy flowed from my hand and sank into his thigh. Through my X-ray vision, I watched in awe as the chi entered the bone and began to knit the fractures back together. My heart hammered against my ribs. My energy could actually heal bones. My father's expression changed. It feels itchy. The pain is actually fading. I kept the flow steady, focusing all my energy on repairing the break. I managed to get the bone about halfway healed before I felt my internal reserves run dry. I needed more chi. I realized then that if I went back to the antique markets and found more relics to absorb, I could heal him completely on my own. He didn't even need a hospital. Wait, the pain is gone, my father exclaimed. He looked down at his leg in shock. I can feel it again. Before, it was just dead weight, and moving hurt like crazy. Xiao Fan, what did you do? Dad, let's just get checked out first, I said, unable to explain the truth in a crowded ward. We're going to the capital. Your leg is fine. No one is cutting anything off. Just then, a nurse walked in. Her face was like stone. Bed 3, you need to vacate immediately. They were kicking us out. I gritted my teeth. This place was beyond cruel. We had handed over 200,000 yuan. They hadn't even fixed the bone, and now they were throwing a disabled man onto the street. I felt powerless. I was just an ordinary guy. I didn't have connections or a powerful background to fight a hospital. This was the grim reality for people like us. Everyone knows the system is broken, but nobody fixes it. Hospitals used to want fewer patients. Now, they celebrate when their numbers hit 1 million, hanging banners to brag about their record-breaking profits squeezed from the pockets of the sick. One major illness can wipe out a lifetime of a family's savings. That's why people tremble when they hear the word hospital. I carried my father on my back to the discharge window. When I asked for the remaining balance of our deposit, the clerk didn't even look up. The 200,000 is gone, she said coldly. There's nothing to refund. How is that possible? I yelled at the glass. You didn't even perform surgery. How can 200,000 be gone just like that? Don't yell at me, she snapped, her voice dripping with boredom. It's the hospital policy. Your stay and medications cost that much. The computer shows a zero balance. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Arguing with a clerk was useless. She was just a cog in the machine. As I turned to leave, a group of doctors in white coats came rushing down the hall. They were surrounding a middle-aged man in a sharp suit. He was balding and looked frantic. Dr. Zhao, the man in the suit cried out. Please look at my child. The man in the sharp suit had a noticeable belly and was clutching a young boy about 7 or 8 years old. The child looked like he was on the verge of death, his face pale and lifeless. They rushed toward a group led by an elderly man with a white beard and hair. I recognized him immediately. He was the head of the hospital. Dr. Zhao Haifeng froze when he saw the director personally escorting the man. He knew exactly who this was. This was President Liu, the wealthiest man in Qishui County. The director spoke quickly, his voice tight with urgency. He explained that President Liu's son seemed to be suffering from some kind of poisoning. Their equipment showed the toxins were concentrated in the boy's bones. He looked at Zhao Haifeng and told him he was the best orthopedic specialist they had. He ordered him to save the boy. Zhao Haifeng didn't hesitate for a second. He slapped his chest and made a grand promise. He told them not to worry and claimed this was his specialty. He swore he would cure the boy. I watched him disgusted. He didn't even know what the illness was yet, but he was already making guarantees. He wanted to look good in front of the director and leave a lasting impression on President Liu. There was an opening for a vice president position at the hospital. I could see the greed in his eyes. He figured if he saved the kid, the promotion was his. Excited by the opportunity, Zhao Haifeng led them into a nearby ward to begin treatment immediately. I felt a surge of anger just looking at his smug, sycophantic face. But then my gaze shifted to the boy in President Liu's arms. Something felt wrong. I followed my instincts and activated my X-ray vision. As my sight pierced through the boy's skin, I gasped. The bones near his heart were pitch black. It was a sign of extreme poisoning. But there was something else. I felt a familiar vibration. It was spiritual energy. My eyes lit up. Spiritual energy was exactly what I needed. If I could absorb enough of it, I could fully heal the shattered bones in my father's legs. The boy's body was practically glowing with it. A plan formed in my mind. If I could get close enough to absorb that energy, I could save my father. I kept my vision active, watching through the walls of the ward. They laid the boy on the bed. Zhao Haifeng started his examination, even checking the boy's pulse. He actually seemed to have some skill, but his expression changed fast. His face went pale. Cold sweat began to bead on his forehead. He stared at the boy for a long time without saying a word. President Liu couldn't take the silence anymore and asked him what the diagnosis was. Zhao Haifeng forced a smile. He told him not to worry and claimed it was just a common case of poisoning. He said he would write a prescription and the boy would be fine after taking it. I watched through the wall as his pen moved across the paper. When I read the ingredients he was writing down, my blood ran cold. My lips curled into a grimace. That medicine wouldn't cure anyone. It was a death sentence. That prescription was going to kill the boy.